USA YouTubers and, let's be honest, grifters in any fandom would.
So the first thing I'm worried about is that it gives some of these YouTube grifters, these tourists that have been, visiting our fandom just to shit on some of the projects, it adds more fuel to their fire that they're trying to burn about how, American Godzilla sucks, or there's only 3 Toho movies worth watching.
There are a lot of grifters around right now, and they do not care about the franchise, no matter what they say.
Grifters.
YouTube grifters, these tourists.
There are a lot of grifters.
Grifters.
There we go. Okay. I realized that for some reason Streamer decided to mess with every single one of my settings. Don't you just love it when you're like, okay, I assume everything is fine, but for some reason your system in the background's like, no, fuck you. I'm gonna change everything about your setup, so when you're ready to do a stream or something, you're gonna have to go into your settings and see what the issue is, and then you're like, oh no. But hey, settings messing pain. Absolutely. But hello, Drake. Hello, Minecraft World. Hello, Joe Smo. How's it going, guys? What's up, my Gigans? And we got a Brandine in the house. I haven't seen Brandine in the chat a little bit. And again, guys, goes by Skull Getter over on DeviantArt. If you guys want any figures painted by him, he has really good rates, and he is a good man, and he does a lot of good work when it comes to painting. So yeah, give him a follow over there on DeviantArt, and if you're feeling like giving him any money, please be sure to do so. He's a good man. We like good men around here. I have come here to drink Slurpees and kick butt, and I'm all out of Slurpees. There's a Kaiju Not, a Vic Manana in the chat. I just finished a major test for class. There you go. Congratulations. I'd assume that you'd be on like spring break right now, but maybe that's different for other parts of the country. And lesson to be learned for any of my spring breakers, my Zimmers who are over 21. IPAs are bad. IPAs are terrible. Drink proper beer. IPAs are trash. Also, you should do a response drawing to Vic and mine's original kaiju pose drawing. I will have to, but it'll probably be like a very, very sloppy whip because I'm working on several art pieces. One of them is for an official piece of media that will be coming to G-Fest. I don't want to spoil what that is, but I will be doing a video at the GFest to show that off. So I'm very happy about that there. But I will definitely do something about that. Spring break is next week for you. Okay, gotcha. That'll be fun. I hope you enjoy it because, yeah, spring break for everyone where I am on my part of the country is this week. Howdy for the sea monster, one of the sea boys. If Animus actually shows in the chat, I would not be surprised since it is so late where I am. He's probably like either just getting up or he's probably going to work right now, unfortunately. So he will not probably be able to catch this, unfortunately. But I'm happy for everyone who is here, who is joining us. Got 7 viewers. That's good. I've noticed that progressively as I've been gaining more subscribers, which I'm really happy about, the general chats have been getting a little bit more filled up, and I want to thank everyone for being so kind as to stop in and watch these things, especially ones that are late at night. The only reason why this one is so late is because of the fact that I was coming back from work, so I essentially was like, I need to bounce out of work and I need to come here to do this, and I wanted to kind of jump on the topic. It's the same thing with journalism, for example, where you want to get on a topic as quickly as possible. So as a result, I wanted to discuss this as soon as I could. So every idea I had was kind of fresh in my mind. You can send him a link to the playback. I think he subscribed to me because I know I'm sub to him, so he probably will see it there. I going to GFS this year. Sweet, or actually not sweet. Sweats. That's sweat. Wish I can go. I still haven't gone to GFest yet. GFest is really fun. It's like the big trip I always plan to go to. So I've been saving up a bunch of money since last year to prep for this year because I always go a little earlier and I do fun Illinois stuffs before GFest starts proper. So that's the fun thing for me, is that I get to see everyone come in slowly and progressively until you finally get to that weekend, and then all hell breaks loose. And that's the fun part. And since there is a GFest, there's a GFest chat in the Discord. So for people who are going to GFest and want to meet up, I will put like where I'll be at and things of that nature in the Discord. So yeah, and speaking of the Discord, I'm going to put in a link here for anyone who wants to join. And for anyone who wants to join the Discord or does join the Discord, just say hey, like tag me. I'm not someone who is against pinging, especially if it's in my server, just so I know that like you're a real person. Because I know earlier there was like 2 accounts that joined that looked almost exactly the same. No profile picture, no mutual servers, no mutual friends, no nothing. And I just had to end up kicking them out because I was like, I wonder why those are there in the first place. But yeah. I don't remember what times GFest is in Texas. It's July. It's like the 13th, 14th, and 15th this year. But yeah, it's always in July around the same time every single year. So like those same set of dates. I know at the moment the Hyatt is completely sold out, if I recall correctly. So if you want to still go to GFS, you can still get tickets and stuff, but you're gonna have to go to the other hotels there. So just heads up. Speaking of Discords, are you still on the ETN Discord or no? I should be. I think so. Unless like they kicked people who like, because I don't interact in there too much, and it's not like people are like DMing me or adding me on the server. Plus, I'm in so many servers. I think I have to be like close to 70 servers at this point. And most of them I just kind of lurk in. Just want to see what I'm saying. Yeah, I saw it right there. I am in the server. Granted, don't tell Rob this, but I unfortunately have not been watching a lot of the videos recently. I just haven't had the time to because I've been trying to grind out my own content, unfortunately. And Kyrie's here too. Hello, hello, hello. But I think enough time has passed. It's not the usual 10 that I like to do, but I will begin to start the video. And if you heard that click, it's because since I have an IPA with me and I'm trying to just chug it down because the alcohol is good, but it's also an IPA, and I just want to get these out of my house as quickly as possible. I have a Orange Crush with me because that's like the only other soda I have, and I hid some voltage somewhere and I don't remember where I put it. So yeah, I'll have to settle for Orange Crush. But yeah, this video is going to be a Rick the Squirrel video. I think it's the second one that we've done. It's talking about the Godzilla Fandom in 2025 with Kaiju Canuck. And what we'll be doing is a mixture of 2 things. So we'll be watching the video itself, and then we'll be going into the comment section. There's not too many comments, and as a result, that allows me a perfect opportunity to address some ideas I think are relevant to this discussion here. And for some people who are saying, oh, well, like, why would you want to go into the comments? I think that if you are fine with posting a comment publicly, then you're fine with someone who is then talking about the topic to then bring it up in a video responding to that video that you have commented on. I think that that is fair in my opinion. Sup. Hello, Acno. And like I said, I think that we will take this in as good faith as possible. So everyone, I have already said this in the survey. I want everyone on the best behavior. But before we begin, if you like what I'm doing, please definitely sign up for the Patreon if you're being oh so generous, or a super chat, anything that helps. Especially if like everyone who subbed donates like $1, that will go a long way in terms of helping me just do things more regularly on the channel and dedicate more resources to making the content even better. So let's go Streamception just for a split second, and we shall begin.
I'm a guy that's
And also for context, you know how we do things around here. It is YouTubers on speed, but because I'm going to make this a little slower pace of a stream in terms of my discussions and things of that nature, I will be putting it on 1.5 times speed instead of 2 times speed, because I think that that's a good enough speed. And Gojira Core 94, you're new. Hello, hello. Welcome. I always like seeing new people in the chats.
stutters a lot.
Hey man, you're the smartest squirrel I've ever met.
I appreciate it.
But yeah, so like whole conversation around like how you can, it's hard for people to like look at things on equal footing, or you approach it from, I don't know what the way. Basically, I guess where I'm at with the fandom is our fandom is extremely diverse, right? Just due to the circumstances around the media, the nature of the media. Like it's 70 years old, Godzilla. There's a whole slew of American history. There's a whole slew of Japanese history. And so I think almost naturally there are these pockets that people will fit into, right? Like maybe you only care about the Showa era Japanese stuff. For some of the younger fans, like maybe you vibe more with the MonsterVerse stuff because that's what you grew up with. And so almost in the nature of the media form, you're going to have these different sects. So I think that's almost entirely unavoidable. But then the problem comes in is like when these two different sects just don't know how to talk to one another.
So I agree with the sentiment that Canuck introduces here, that the fandom is incredibly diverse, and I think that inherently that is the problem with the fandom. Not that that's a bad thing, but that is the main issue that arises in the fandom, is that because the fandom is so incredibly diverse, you will have people with such drastically different viewpoints and opinions that outside of the fact that y'all like Godzilla, there's going to be no kind of common ground that y'all are going to share, because like your perspectives on things, your ethics are going to be so drastically different from one another externally that it's going to be an issue, and you're drawn into the fandom by so many diametrically opposed things that as a result, it's going to be very hard to talk to one another. And if we're going to just translate this to like product itself, you will ultimately have to deal with the fact that Toho, Legendary, and any company is doing Godzilla stuff will not have infinite resources to commit to your personal pet project or your personal view of Godzilla. And as a result, people will have to sort of band together into their small little groups and their enclaves to campaign for certain ideas that they want pushed when it comes to where they want the Godzilla IP to go. And the hard thing for a lot of people is that there's so much inertia because of the 70-year-long history that there's a lot of sentiments that are very like embedded in the fandom that unless something makes absolutely massive waves, you're not going to see too much love or any kind of stuff coming out that you may enjoy. -1 is a perfect example of this. I think that if the film had done moderately well, we would have seen a few Godzilla like products here and there that are -1 related. But with the absolutely massive success that Godzilla -1 received, -1, interestingly enough, and this was something someone else had told me, was that when it came to licensing -1, Toho essentially separated out the -1 license as its own little separate license that companies have to then purchase in order to do Godzilla -1 product versus regular Godzilla stuff. And of course, licenses, copyrights, etc. That's a whole legal minefield that we're not ready to tackle in this video and on this live stream itself. I've covered it in a few other videos here and there. The best one I've done was the original Godzilla 98 Zilla video that I did a long time ago, and I've covered that same specific topic here and there when it comes to 98 and Zilla live streams. But yeah, like I think a lot of people who are really on board with -1 are really happy because you're getting a whole lot of stuff regarding -1 across like clothing, figures, posters, statues, etc. While a lot of people who are big show fans of certain monsters are kind of left in the dust because their monster isn't the most popular. And as a result, you're going to have to fight for what it is that you can get. I know personally for myself, the one thing I've liked recently when it comes to Toho Godzilla is the figure polls, because it gives certain monsters that are not as popular the opportunity to get a movie monster series figure made for them. And as a result, I, as someone who collects primarily the movie monster series, because they, even though they're not always hyper accurate or specific to certain incarnations, they provide a facsimile of the character that is sufficient enough to my standards that I am willing to buy the product. It's the one thing I buy the most when it comes to anything else. And as a result, I'm always happy that I can see, I get to see this monster get a Bandai Movie Monster series figure. Basic examples being Gorosaurus, Varan, and 65 Baragon. All of those monsters got movie monster series, even though some of them are based off of older Bandai sculpts. I am super happy that those came out and that I have the opportunity to buy them. There's been other monsters that weren't part of those polls that have gotten figures that I plan to get in the futures. I haven't gotten Minilla or Ebra yet. I still want to get those, mostly because of the completionist sake. I don't really collect X Plus. I'm not a big Super 7 collector. I think the only Super 7 figure that I do have at the moment is the Godzilla 1957, because it's the volcano monster Godzilla design. And that was such a deep cut that I appreciate that they made it. So I was like, oh, awesome. I'm happy that I got it. And going back to the figure polls, there are certain cases where when certain monsters win, I'm like, why? Like, why was this monster picked? And Vic says it best, MVP. Like, I'm sorry, but the only reason why the Giant Condor won the Bandai poll was because it was the meme pick. And when the Western part of the fandom was given access to do the poll, I immediately knew that the silliest or the meanest options would always be the ones that were picked. And I ain't gonna be salty about it, but I think Descadora was part of that list of figures that we could have gotten, as well as Mysterian's Mogera. Even like Flying Space Godzilla was another one that was part of that poll. And I'm like, we were like, the meme pick is the one that won. And I'm like, I'm very curious to see how many of those figures actually move. But like, okay, I guess. The same thing with here, like Skeleturtle. If Skeleturtle ends up as a pick there, it will win because it's the meme pick. Exactly. I would have voted for Orga. I think Orga was part of that too. I think Orga was one I had voted for. Descadora, I really would have wanted that, especially because like there isn't a lot of them. And like I would have loved for the scrap monsters as well. I'm still trying to get my hands on the Zilla figure. Get it from Beast-These Collectibles. They're usually really good about keeping their figures in stock, and they have them for pretty good prices. So that's the website I would recommend the most out of anything. But going back to the next point, the diversity of the fandom inherently means that there will be irrevocable differences between certain parties, and as a result, even if like everyone is civil, there will be certain topics that most people will not budge on. And if you got two like people who are not going to budge on a certain topic and they're pretty bold personality wise, then there's going to be some kind of conflict there. But there's also other things that I want to discuss as well that I think I may discuss later. I might pause like in just a second to discuss.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like the Monsterverse younger crowd says, like, how could you like those older Showa movies? It's just people in deteriorating rubber suits fighting like mascots at a ball game. Like, what is there to be enjoyed? Right? And then you could just as easily have this older crowd come back to the Monsterverse folks and say, yeah, well, all of your creatures are digital. They've never even existed in the real world. Like, that's soulless. How could you enjoy that stuff? So, and I don't know like what percentage, what fraction of the communities are actually composed of people like this. I like to believe that it's a vocal minority and that most of us are capable of getting along and having productive conversations. But it's in these like small minorities, these loud people, where like the worst personalities of the fandom come out, and we sort of all get brushstroked as part of it.
Mm-hmm. Well,
there are several YouTubers that try.
Yeah, I'm gonna stop right there. I think another thing as well is that will you see more vocal people? Yes, because they're the people that are commenting and responding and interacting the most. You're gonna see the most vocal people in any situation because as a result, like they're the people who are like discussing things. Like if you don't want discussion to be toxic, then making sure that you are lending your voice to the greater discussion as a whole is the only thing that's really going to help shift vibes, as it were. But another thing, and I don't think they discuss it here at all, I think a lot of people don't like to mention this, and I don't think it's like because they think it's a bad thing, but like there is definitely a lot of people in the Godzilla community or dinosaur community or these fandoms in general who are probably on the spectrum and are also young. We'll tackle being young first. I think that as someone who grew up with the internet not being as ubiquitous as it is now, there were a lot more older people using the internet back when I was like a lot younger and I was getting onto these like forums and the things of these natures, like Barry's Temple of Godzilla, Rodan's Roost, Monster Zero, Toho Kingdom, etc. But as access to the internet became more commonplace across like the world and younger people started using the internet more and more, I think that as Godzilla has been aimed at children and it's easy for children to get into Godzilla, you have a large majority of people who are interacting in the community who are a lot younger than most people think. And as a result, when people say like, oh yeah, everyone like who talks about this is like a baby and crying about it, it's like, yeah, it's probably because a lot of them are younger children who aren't as emotionally regulated as adults are. Granted, there's also adults who are, without a doubt, not able to regulate their emotions and go off kilter, like for one reason or another. But I think that it is undersold, like how many young people are interacting in a fan base alongside older people. And then now going on to the next topic, I think that there's a lot of people on the spectrum who do engage with the fandom. And I think in a lot of cases, there isn't like not everyone understands how to interact with some of these people, and some of these people, because of the fact that they're on their spectrum, it's harder for them to interact in certain ways, and that will cause some miscommunication and certain freakouts to occur. I think a lot of people, when they're actually given the opportunity to sit down and discuss things with one another on equal ground, clear the air, you realize a lot more things about one another that you wouldn't if you're just kind of going back and forth across Twitter or any other forum. And I think that's something definitely to consider. I can't think of any mainstream fandom that isn't toxic. I think that, and I remember I discussed this years ago in my Godzilla community or Godzilla fandom commentary videos, which were like my oldest videos. And I remember my fandom community video was one of my oldest videos and one of my longest at the time. It was like only, and I love the fact that I'm saying this, it is only like half an hour and some odd minutes. But I think even in that video, I stated that every fandom is toxic because you're going to have some person act in a malicious manner or act in a rude manner in a fandom. And if that person claims to be a fan of that franchise, then by proxy, ultimately you have a toxic fandom because you have a toxic element there. And the calculation of the quote unquote toxic fandom, in my opinion, oftentimes devolves into this almost one drop type of rule where a fandom can only be non-toxic if there was never any toxic people to begin with. And that is a literal pipe dream. There is no way you're going to get every single toxic element out of every fandom. That is literally impossible. But I know a lot of people and a lot of Godzilla fans that I will see across Twitter, especially Twitter, and I don't use Reddit, so I can't really say Reddit, but especially like X, will be like, oh my gosh, the Godzilla fandom is one of the most toxic fandoms ever. And I find that hilarious because there are several fandoms I can think of off the top of my head that have resulted in the literal deaths of people. And I think I'm far enough into live stream to where if I say that word that I'm not going to get my nuts chopped off for it. But yeah, there's some fandoms where certain community members in quote unquote best intentions have driven people to do things that are ultimately way worse than any fandom spat that's happened in the Godzilla space. Like, a lot of people love to dog on like, oh, like bad Twitter spats and like debates that have happened there. Again, nothing all of that pales in comparison to what I've seen happen in other fandoms. I'm kind of introduced a lot of cool people to Godzilla, but the most cursed Godzilla relationship I've seen is made by people who are also introduced to Godzilla by Katsum. I think, like, generally because the MonsterVerse is so popular, it just introduced a lot of younger people, and as a result, also brought a lot of mainstream focus back into Godzilla. And when you have mainstream appeal, you also get normies, and normies bring a lot of bad things. And normies, general audiences, whatever you want to call them, it's gonna relate to people who do not have as much investment in a fandom. They are there purely because it is the latest thing. In a little while later, they're going to talk about like the idea of the tourist or the grifter, which I have words on. But when it comes to those types of fans, they oftentimes they can be pretty toxic because they have their own opinion and they don't really feel like they want to be challenged on these topics because they're not really here for the long run. They're not there to build community. They're there to engage with a fun new trend. And then once the trend kind of goes away and no one really likes it anymore, they're just going to pop smoke and leave. Autistic man children are also a factor within all fandoms and fandom has. Yeah, I think that like there's a mixture of like people, like younger people who are on the spectrum, and then people who are older and do not know how to regulate their emotions, and as a result, they go off kilter, and it is hard to differentiate between like someone who doesn't know better and people who do know better. And my opinion when it comes to anything online, it's that unless someone swings first, just treat it like as good faith as possible. So like, unless you get a certain vibe, you don't like hammer back hard. But if they decide to go in, you can go in, because as a result, you're only responding to what it is that you have already received from that other person. And plus, like, that's not something I can say works for everyone. Like, not everyone has like a meta personality like myself and like other people. But in cases where like you feel like you can't handle that, I will say this from my chest, and I encourage anyone else to use it. If you don't really like what someone's saying, you don't have the time to deal with like someone really going in on you, just block them. Like, I never hold it against anyone who wants to come in at like, I go in on someone because they went in on me and they decided to block me. I'm like, okay, you want to block me? Cool. The only issue I have with things like that is when someone blocks you and then continues to talk about you behind the block, because then it's like, you don't want to not do this anymore. You just want a type of one-way sort of shit slinging type of scenario there. And I don't really like that type of stuff. As autistic, I just go on X and look around, confused as to why people insult others over a big fictional atomic spewing lizard. And I think that like going to this topic, it is pretty common that like certain people will have a lot more and greater investment into things, and as a result, like, it is something that they will hold a lot of like value in. I know dozens and dozens of people have various different kind of home lives, things of that nature, that is very awful, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone else. And as a result, they will go to a fandom or a certain IP for that kind of comfort. And whether it is the good decision or not to do, certain people will unfortunately take that a step too far and will not realize that you're kind of acting a little off the cuff here and you need to kind of simmer it down, which in some cases, if you are able to communicate and treat that person a certain way, then they realize, oh yeah, I kind of messed up, that's my bad. And in other cases, people just don't care. And block. Yeah, cowards do that. Hey, Minecraft. Gojin's in here. Hello, Gojin. Hello, fellow Godzilla fans. I hear that Godzilla -1 is getting an official English translation and release. Really looking forward to that. Well, Godzilla -1 already got a official English translation and release video wise, but there is that novel that will be coming out later on this year, which I did a short on, as well as also Country Shape Media. I think you were also new as well. Welcome, welcome. And there it is. I was deep in the Sonic fan once upon a time. Like there are certain communities who are attracted more than others. So there's that. And I'm doing well, Gojin.
Try to be analytical, and there are some good ones. And I've talked to a couple of them, and I've mentioned them before, right before this. And like Blotswave, he's a really nice guy. And his favorite, hopefully he's fine with me saying this, his favorite Godzilla movie is The Planet Eater, but he doesn't want to talk about it because about how like contested that film is and just the anime trilogy as a whole.
Right.
And like he finds a lot about that film that maybe others don't see or he just disagrees with. And the whole thing is that there's just always this, it's always someone's prerogative or like their own.
This is going into another topic that I will probably cut it at the waist because it essentially vague posting about something that I've discussed with Rick before in the past, but I don't hold it against him in this case. But when it comes to people who discuss certain contentious pieces of media, in most cases, oftentimes you'll be able to find an enclave of people who like your specific ostracized media. In a lot of those cases, those fandoms, like those little micro fandoms, are usually hyper. They're like very meticulously moderated and are essentially echo chambers, like to some degree. I would say the biggest example of it, 98 fan groups, like across any like website, are hyper moderated, hyper positive. There is little discourse around the quality of that film, and there's little discussion about whether anything in those films is bad. It is just pure praise. And in most cases, if someone is looking for a certain like group that they want that's specifically positive about a piece of media that is very much maligned, you can find it. Or oftentimes people will then go in and make their own, and they're the ones who start those types of smaller communities. But I think that, yes, for the vast majority of people, if you're talking to strangers online and there is a certain reputation that a movie has, you're not going to get a hyper in-depth conversation from most people. But if you really want to look for it and discuss it with people, you'll find it. And I think that like it comes from an idea I also believe where these days I think a lot of people take the idea of the internet and like the fact that you're talking to strangers for the most part and kind of forget that, where even though like there's you may be talking with certain people for a long period of time, there's still gonna be that degree of separation because you've probably never seen their face, you've probably never heard their voice. And people use the internet as a public forum, which is the case, like is the purpose in some cases, but don't realize that as a public forum, you're going to have a lot of public people who will disregard any kind of civility and decide to go off on someone. And as a result, I think that is on the person itself, to where if you do not want to deal with a toxic or combative atmosphere, you need to then use the tools that you have. So if someone is harassing you, use the block button. Don't keep interacting with that person. Don't try to respond to them behind blocks. Like, don't interact them. Simple as good. And in most cases, if someone continues to harass you from behind a block, then most people are going to be on your side. If you want to discuss things with people that are more contentious, cultivate a friend group online. And in most cases, even if they don't agree with your takes, they're usually going to be pretty civil about it. And I think that people have forgotten that, yeah, just find friends online. It's not as hard as people like to think.
Agenda, because it's always like Godzilla cannot be a hero. He cannot be the savior or stuff or a hero and blah, blah, like stuff like that. Can like Godzilla Monsterverse is bad because they say he's a hero, but he destroys and kills people in the process. Therefore, it's bad. And like they're kind of going about it and doing it in a black and white way, and they're removing context just so their point can fit. So they'll describe Godzilla in the same manner as GMK Godzilla who intentionally destroys stuff, like because their favorites are Shin Godzilla or 54 minus one or GMK because those are the ones where Godzilla is villainized.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, Godzilla can't be anything else, or like you can't have an interpretation and have the story and context be different because my favorite is like that. And he's a giant monster. His existence means blah 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 blah. Therefore, there can't be any other gray area for all this or any argument or explanation as to why it's like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just so frustrating to see that. And especially when people like say, oh, this movie is bad or this movie blah 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 is doing this, and there are examples, and when they show it, it's like it's really embarrassing because I can tell when someone either didn't watch the movie or they just didn't pay attention. And I don't know which one is worse, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And
for the astute people of the Zimzilla community, I think everyone knows where I'm going to go with this. And I think that this kind of topic goes a little further into the video. But I just want to know, type 1 in the chat if you kind of know what all of this is in reference to, or more accurately, who it's in reference to. If you are new and you don't know, I will not keep you out of the loop for too long. But for people who are aware of who this is probably referencing, type 1 in the chat.
it's very, because even if it's a small minority, like vocal minority for this stuff, but some of these videos do get thousands of views, like not like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands, but it's enough to where you can get that ball rolling. Because for the longest time, I know the Cinemassacre, who most people associate with Angry Video Game Nerd, but a lot of Godzilla fans also know him because of James Rolfe's Godzilla-thon. Like, he always had these opinions that are always like parroted over and over again. Like 1998 would have been good if it was just called The Beast of 20,000 Fathoms. Like, would the movie have been any different if it wasn't called Godzilla?
So, this is an interesting topic. As the resident 98 stomper, I will explain in brief why the film would be different to some degree if it wasn't called Godzilla. Because as a film that no longer has the legacy and the perception of being a Godzilla film, therefore, the problems that occur with Godzilla due to its characterization, thematic inconsistencies of things of that nature are therefore less prominent because you are no longer then having to adhere to adapting the character of Godzilla. I would still say that even if the film was called The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, it'd be better than calling it Godzilla, but there's certain things that The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms also does, and certain trappings that I would expect from a film also called that would still make certain parts of the film bad. Like the design, for example, that would be a big one still. But divorcing the movie and the character that appears in that film from the character of Godzilla also divorces it from expectations that come with that name. It's the same thing as any bad adaptation of any character. If you remove those expectations and therefore those adherences from trying to adapt a character, it changes that dynamic inherently. So therefore, certain thematic readings of a scene, the intention behind certain actions here and there, what the director was going to do based on the themes they wanted to portray, all of that changes when you are divorced from a certain character and going into another, or just doing something completely original. Part of me wants to see what a modern day remake of Beast from 20,000 Fathoms would be like. I don't know. Like, anytime nowadays when I hear someone say modern remake, I'm always like, no. The film would still be badly written if we called it Giant Meat Iguana instead of Godzilla. The plot holes or bad characters are still going to be present. Yes, the plot holes and bad characters are still going to be present, but the gravity of those bad characters and themes especially are going to be lessened as a result. Okay, that one's not as relevant, but
like, were all your problems just because it didn't look the way you wanted to, or like he didn't act the way he did for you? I'm like, fair enough if you thought that, but everyone, like, are all the other problems from the movie or anything else changed because of that?
Right.
And a few years ago, like 2019, it started. There was this whole thing about how actually the Heisei films are really bad and blah 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 blah. Like Miki Sakusa is a terrible character. Why? How could she defend Godzilla?
Yeah.
So I'll say this right here: the anti-Heisei discourse was mostly started from a particular YouTuber. I think we all know who that is. I would say type something else in the chat if you know who it is, but like in this case, since I'm not as associated with him, I'm more comfortable, and there's like not as much drama about it anymore. So a lot of the Heisei discourse started around Blue Nova talking about the problems with the Heisei Godzilla series, and at the time, because the Heisei Godzilla films were so praised, it was a culture shock for most of the fandom to hear someone be as adamantly against the Heisei films at that time. And I will say this, as someone who was definitely a kid around the time that that discourse took place, there was a lot of people who are way younger than I am. I'm talking like 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15-year-olds. And anyone who deals with younger children or like deals with teenagers knows that teenagers can be like really, really opinionated and love to be contrarians. And even though the Heisei series, the Heisei hate discourse got a lot of attention behind it, it was still very much more of a vocally fringe opinion. But a lot of people wanted to jump on the bandwagon because it did make people want to, like, it was fun for like certain people to watch like fans clutch their pearls and like, do you dare hate the Heisei movies? Or like, how could you hate the Heisei movies? People hate the Heisei, all the circles I'm in are obsessed with that area. Yeah, and that's the thing, is that like, actually, I appreciate you, 94, for saying this. Here's the thing: even though you are part of a fandom, you could be so involved with your specific circles that you are so insulated from any other discourse that occurs that this may not be something that you are aware of. And I think that like circles like mine, where a lot of it is discussions about media or responses to other people about Godzilla, you're just going to see a lot more other opinions and sort of dip your toes into certain circles and see what like the latest discussions are going to be. I know for myself, I've seen so many different like small spats and stuff that I have mentioned at G-Fest, for example. At G-Fest is like, you'd think it's like the place where the hardcore of hardcore Godzilla fans are going to be, but in reality, you're going to see those people, but you're also going to see people who like are Godzilla fans because they saw it growing up and they were like, oh, it's a convention about just Godzilla, I want to go. Or people who are bringing their kids in because their kids are really big into the fandom. It is one of those cases to where, as big as the fandom is also really small, but it may be small, but it's big enough to where you can have your own small little circles in your specific platform of choice and never interact with any other drama that occurs. And in those cases, you're probably going to be super confused when someone says, oh man, the fandom's really toxic. You're like, I interact with maybe like 100 or so like different people a day. I don't see it. And that's one of those cases where you see a lot of breakdown where someone's like, oh, I don't really interact with it. It's like, well, then you're just not looking hard enough. Or, oh, you're not a good person because you're not being vigilant about this stuff happening. When you need to realize that not everyone is going to see what it is you deal with. And that's one of the reasons why I know when it comes to when I do the Zimcast, anytime I'm responding to a video, I like to have the video in the description. Back when originally, before I started doing live streams, a lot of my response videos from back in the day were essentially video format Zimcast, where it was me responding to someone's opinions about the fandom or Godzilla in general. And as a result, this format worked really well. It was popularized by other like different YouTube spaces. And what it allows me to do, or people to do who take up a similar format, the Sea Monster Lives being a good example of this, is that you aren't doing a he said, she said type of hearsay of what someone might have said from like this website that was taking screenshots from somewhere else, and you're playing that game of telephone. You are seeing the video that we are responding to, and I am giving my live thoughts as you are hearing what is being said in my direct reaction. And I think that like that is why I like this format, for example. My brother hates the Heisei Gamer movies, so I kind of know what it looks. How does your brother hate the Heisei Gamer films? That is weird. Your brother's weird. I'm sorry, man. I am the #1 Heisei glazer, but I still can understand and agree with some of the criticisms. Yeah, no, same.
stuff, and they're missing the context, and they'll use scenes from the dub, which is hilariously inaccurate because I went and took a scene that was very scrutinized from Space Godzilla and asked someone to translate it, the Japanese audio, and it was completely different from what the dub was. Like, it wasn't even talking about Godzilla and stuff. It was like, oh, Godzilla has feelings, and it wasn't about that.
Yeah.
And they're also missing the context. Like earlier in the movie, it's like Mothra's twin fairies say Godzilla is the only way to defend the Earth from monsters like Space Godzilla. So Miki Sakusa's in a place where she can't really like convince the world. Like, she's still there at trying to stop him and everything. It's not that she's emotional about Godzilla. It's emotional because she has to take care of Godzilla Jr., who is not aggressive and is just friendly, like, and stuff like that. So,
and I'm only going to respond to this like small bit here, only because it is specifically an interesting topic to discuss, which I think when we get into the summer, I might want to do like continuity Zimcasts where I get a bunch of people on and we talk about like the world building of a certain timeline. So we'll probably do like a longer Zimcast for the Showa timeline, one for the Heisei timeline, which that's probably gonna be the most popular one, and I have to get people in and out, even if I have like more space for people. And then Millennium one, which would probably be the smallest, and we'll just do all of the like different micro eras of the Millennium series. But when it comes to Godzilla and his ability to protect the Earth from other monsters, even if that is the case, you still have the precedent of Godzilla 84, where Godzilla was antagonistic. Even if he was just hungry, Godzilla still posed a direct danger to humanity. Godzilla versus Biollante, similar sort of deal. Same thing with Godzilla versus King Ghidorah. Same thing to a lesser extent in Godzilla versus Mothra, only because of him has less to do with Godzilla. And then there is Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2, where, again, Godzilla is less in the wrong because Godzilla is more there to get baby Godzilla. But still, even if Godzilla's actions are more understandable, he is still causing a greater degree of damage to regular people's lives that engender a response from the authorities. And even if a space monster appears, there is no guarantee that Godzilla is going to stop doing what Godzilla has done. Because by this point, Godzilla has left of his own accord really only once, and that was in the previous film, which, given the amount of times this passed, does not necessarily mean that even though Godzilla now has a smaller member of his species, that Godzilla is going to stop attacking humanity. And there's also the idea that Godzilla could raise his offspring to be more aggressive towards humans. So even if Godzilla, like baby Godzilla, little Godzilla, isn't as aggressive as he is now, there's no guarantee in this case. Of course, the film doesn't like talk about this as much, and it really only does it in Destroya, and that's when we don't even know if Godzilla Jr. had come back at this point. But it is something to consider from a world building standpoint, not just a story standpoint, because from a story standpoint, I understand the idea, but it's something I take issue with. And there is in the chat. I'll be on in an hour. Basically, I know that Godzilla still needed to be stopped, which is why Mickey's still there to help G4 stop Godzilla. Yeah.
Whenever they do that, it's like, oh, the 84 and Biollante are the good ones, and everything else sucked because of blah 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 story, blah blah blah, and they ignore any of the context or nuance to that stuff because they don't like the movies, and they just can't find any other way to display why they don't like it. Maybe because they have to make it so condemning of whatever they don't like, and that just like very, I don't know what the word is, just very harmful to discussion, especially when you're like spreading misinformation about stuff, especially behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's harmful to like the state of discourse, I would say.
It is definitely harmful to the state of discourse. And I'll say this to anyone who is doing any type of media. If you are consuming media from a foreign culture, I always recommend looking at the subs and looking at if you can find different translations or different subs of any piece of media, consume them all so that you can get the best possible idea as to what it means from like a translation into your language. Or if you can find friends or like talk to people who do speak that language and ask their opinions on it, you're going to get a better understanding of the media as a result. I think that if you passively want to consume any kind of form of media and you want to watch the dub, you are within your rights to do so. A lot of people will be like, oh, what's it called? Why watch the dub? Read the subtitles like a man. It's based, it's funny, I love it. But in certain cases, it's fun to just like put the media on in the background and just listen to the dub, maybe kind of look back here and there while you're working on something else and consuming media that way. There's nothing wrong with doing that. But if you want to contribute to a deeper discussion on any media from another country, I will always say that it is better to look at subs because you're going to get a more accurate understanding of the media as a result. And I know Gojin has done videos talking about subs versus dubs, and one of his responses, we do kind of talk about this where certain things are just lost in translation when you're doing a dub versus a sub because of many different factors. I think the biggest example and one that a lot of people are going to understand the best is when you look at Godzilla -1's dub versus its sub. So many lines have such different meanings, and like the vibe that they give off is so different when you look at their dub versus their sub, and as a result, you can come away with a very different impression.
Say, right? I think so. There's a couple different points that you've brought up that I think are worth discussing. The first is that people really like to start at their conclusions and then work backwards to find the evidence. It's like they want to say that this movie is terrible, and then you ask them why, and then they have to kind of work backwards. It's like, oh, because of this, because of this, because of this, rather than like experiencing something, looking at evidence for something, and then eventually coming to a conclusion. And I think it's due in part to the second point that you've brought up, that like people just really like to get onto bandwagons.
So do I agree with the sentiment that certain people work back from their conclusions? Yes. Is that easy to like decipher? Like, as someone who like certain people would be like, oh my gosh, Zim, you're like you're amazing debater. Can you do this? Can you tell if someone is working backwards from the conclusion? No, not always. I think it's really hard to do because you have to assume so much from an impression that you will need to have like multiple discussions, multiple interactions with a person before you can really make the claim that they are working back from their conclusion. And you have to exhaust a lot of NPC type of dialogue. And I think that when you are online and you're discussing media with someone, you kind of have to go through certain dialogue trees because, like they said earlier in the video about certain people parroting what others have said, you will get a lot of people who will sort of have their own conclusions. And it's usually less because they're working from a perception they already have and they're working back to find justifications, and more they already have a preconceived notion from someone else. And in those cases, that's easier to come across because usually the verbiage is the same. So you'll know someone has watched the Angry Video Game Nerds Godzilla if you've watched that series enough and you hear people say the exact same thing that he said about a certain topic versus someone who already went into something not wanting to like it and then working backwards to explain why they didn't like it. I know it's a lot easier, I would say, to figure out if someone is more biased than working back from a conclusion, because in a lot of cases, if you ask certain probing questions, you will know whether or not that person either is working back from a conclusion or was already biased when they came in. I think a good example of this for myself is if you I know when I had seen both Godzilla -1 and Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire, you could say, oh, you're more biased against Godzilla -1 because you saw it 13 times versus a New Empire you only saw once. Very true. I can also say that for both films, when I watched them the first time, I was taking notes in both films, but the implications I was getting from my notes with -1 were better than what I was getting from Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire. If someone was to ask me that question, or say oh, what were you doing when you were watching both films? I would say well, I saw them with the same person. I saw them around the same time, and I was doing this, and that when I was watching the films. If I had said, for example, oh, I don't like Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire, and someone asked, well, what were you doing in the film? I was like, oh, I was watching and taking notes. If you make that apparent to someone when you're discussing it, it will give an impression that, oh, he was taking notes because he's trying to find faults with it. And if someone says, oh, well, you were trying to find fault with it because you're taking notes the entire time you were watching the film, you probably missed something. Then your response then becomes, oh, well, I wasn't. I was taking notes because I always do that for Godzilla films now because I also do YouTube about it. So as a result, I always like hearing, like, getting impressions and stuff from the first time I view something. I did it for Godzilla -1. I've done it for every Godzilla film like I saw it in theaters, outside of obviously stuff I've seen at G-Fest and Godzilla 2014 because I wasn't doing that at the time. But all the subsequent films, I was doing that. When you've seen GSK theatrically twice in G-Fest, that's the thing, is that I don't count seeing certain films at G-Fest as seeing them in theaters technically, and I'll explain what I mean by that. Because when I say I'm seeing something theatrically, what I mean by that in this context is I am seeing it within the theatrical run that took place for those films. In a lot of cases, those G-Fest, like the films that I saw at G-Fest, I couldn't have seen in theaters at the time unless it was like a special showing for them. So, for example, I saw Godzilla 54 in theaters at a special event that happened around the same time Final Wars was coming out. So I've seen Godzilla 54 in theaters once, even though I also saw it at G-Fest. There was a special event that I got to see Godzilla 98. The film came out before I was born, so I couldn't have seen it in theaters. And even if like it was still in theaters like the year I was born, I would have been too young to have ever seen it in theaters, but I saw it at an event outside of G-Fest. So as a result, I have seen the film in theaters once. I saw Shin Godzilla in theaters once because, again, it had that limited showing. Got to see it there. Same thing for -1 and all the Monsters films.
And I don't know if it's just like people want to feel like they're part of something. They want to feel included as part of a group. Because like we know, like social science tells us that once you hit like age of 10, prepubescent, prepuberty, like you start to crave social acceptance from your peers. And I don't know if it's just that the crowd who shits on this stuff is louder, and so people feel more drawn to them and people want to join in and be like, oh yeah, this thing is terrible. It's really, really frustrating.
Well, I think he almost gets it there because, like he says, age 10 is when people start to crave social acceptance. A lot of the people that I know and I see day to day who are Godzilla fans are either people who are like my age or significantly younger than me. I see a few older Godzilla fans here and there who are like avidly Godzilla's like the big thing that they're into. But a lot of kids who are going to be online, like on Instagram, on DeviantArt, on X, even though like maybe certain websites they shouldn't be on based on like EULAs, things of that nature, they're going to want to crave social acceptance from their peers who are in the fandom and part of the thing they like. So they're going to align their ideas with those around them, even if they may not necessarily agree with that. And I don't necessarily think the people who shit on things are necessarily louder. I think in certain cases that certain times people who are critical just happen to have better arguments in a lot of cases. That's just what I've seen. And in certain cases, I've seen people who run defenses for certain movies who have very good arguments. But in a lot of cases, there's a lot of modern media where I see the people running defense for these films doing really poor jobs at them. Like, mimetically, the idea of it's a film about space wizards intended for children is a perfect example of people running defense for these films not making good arguments, or the film is good if you pretend it's what you wanted. Like, there's so many video essayists who have made these arguments in defense of these films, and if you were a person who's around Canuck's age, my age, Rick's age, unless you were already inclined to like the media that is being defended, I would not find that a good enough argument to then be like, that is the sign I agree with. Even if I like the film, I wouldn't say that is a good argument to make.
And on the nuance piece, I feel like we are currently living in a moment of time where nuance and thoughtfulness is almost punished, in the sense that like we live in like the TikTok YouTube short, Instagram reel generation, or at least in this moment of time, where everything is meant to like keep you engaged, keep you engaged, keep you engaged, keep watching. Don't think, just keep watching, keep watching, keep watching. And so it's almost like we're being conditioned to not have thoughtful conversations. It's just that we want whatever we are doing in the moment to be resolved so that we can immediately move to the next thing. And there's, like you said, there's a lot of harm in that because of how much thought and detail are put into these things. Like before we start,
I would say like also when it comes to like the TikTok like real age, I think that indeed attention spans are getting like smaller, but there is very little shorts I could say are hypercritical of media. I think a lot of shorts are like theory based, and I think that especially if you haven't been looking at these shorts, or like you don't get them like recommended to you, or you just don't decide to click on them. If you look at a lot of different Instagram shorts, especially in the Godzilla community, a lot of them are going to be your versus stuff, showing off certain clips from a movie, sure, toys that people got, or, and I think I already said the versus battle. Like the versus battles are one that's like discussion based, that are like the easiest to do on a shorts format, because all you're really doing with those small types of shorts videos is you have clips from the movie, you have very cinematic editing, and then you essentially do a scoreboard where you give 1 point to another point for this, and then you decide a winner with like an arbitrary kind of low diff, high diff type of metric. And you can keep doing that because it's going to engage people, because people aren't really coming specifically for the idea of what the person is saying. They want to come in to give their own point on this, either because they want to agree with it or they want to disagree with it. And then the algorithm picks up on that because you're getting a lot of likes or a lot of dislikes and a lot of comments and people going back and forth. So the algorithm is fed because of the engagement rather than the idea itself. And I think that's where the problem lies. Like there's a lot of Godzilla X, like monster, actually not even Godzilla X Kong, MonsterVerse like shorts in general that are theory based, that have no basis in any of the lore, and in a lot of ways go completely based on like fan theories that I've seen, but these are taken as like gospel as to what the intention behind certain scenes were. Like I remember, I wish I had it pulled up, but it appeared on my timeline, and I just decided to watch it. And it was a short, and it was with like one of like the very well known, like if you heard it, you'd know it almost in your like head type of way, AI voices saying that the like Godzilla, like the monster who ate a star from Godzilla X Empire, Godzilla was actually the winged Godzilla, and that Godzilla had wings or some kind of like wing appendages at one point when he fought Scar King and Shimo, and as a result the evolved form was trying to get back to that old state of power, and that's why Godzilla was becoming evolved Godzilla. Like the leaps in logic that were being made were so crazy, and the amount of AI art as well as just like fan art that was being used was over the top. And the reason why those videos do well is because it's provocative. So you're gonna have people are gonna be like, actually, no, you're wrong. You're gonna have other people who are gonna be like, oh yeah, I love this theory, it's like my idea. Then people who are gonna want to pitch their own ideas, like, oh, I hope this is what's gonna happen in the MonsterVerse going forward, things of that nature. And that is definitely AI slop. And I think that like in general, like shorts definitely are more susceptible to producing slop, if that makes sense. But I think that like there are certain things that you consider it slop that have uses to a certain degree. Like, for example, I really like the fact that the actor videos that I've been talking about are doing so well in terms of their numbers. The reason why is because obviously I like the views, and I appreciate the people coming in and giving the videos views and then checking out the other content I have. But the reason why someone could consider them slop is because, well, all you're doing is just providing news that other places are providing, so there's no point in you doing that. The reason why I don't mind doing them as much as I used to is because originally I didn't want to do news stuff like that because there wasn't really much I could add to it. But since I was more in touch with the news cycle going around this time, I felt that if I was going to make these videos, I would want to give a perspective that I feel like there is at least some kind of discussion that could be had there instead of just regurgitating exactly what was being said on these news sites. And I think that like a lot of people do that, and that's when it becomes slop. Like, for example, I know the next video, since there hasn't been a new actor announced yet, it's something I want to talk about when it comes to the leaks and certain context clues that I've noticed that may make the leaks more plausible than I originally anticipated. And is that similar to some of the AI slop theory videos? Perhaps to some people, but I think that it is something where I have no problem someone commenting on me and being like, oh, you're probably wrong for this, and that reason, and being challenged on that, or something like, oh, hey, did you not hear about this, and sends me a link, and I'm like, okay, cool, I can consider the information here, and if need be, I can revise my ideas as a result, and therefore I can also temper my expectations for the film going forward.
Started recording, we were just talking about all the small gestures in GXK with Suko and Kong, and how you can feel Scar King's presence and his impact on the other characters before you even meet him if you pay attention to Suko's movements, right? For somebody who like thoughtfully watches that movie, maybe they'll pick up on it like you did. But for the person who's got the movie on in the background, is not really paying attention, like, oh, where's the fights? Where's all this other stuff? Like, they're going to miss that entirely. And somebody went through the trouble of making sure that these things were in the film, and it's just gone, you know?
Yeah. And one of the most contentious and controversial.
And real quick, going about this, I think that even if someone thoughtfully looks at those scenes in the movie and be like, oh, this is what they're trying to go for, this is what they've done to give us context clues, that is good. But then just because we see that, it does not then justify the other world building or logical issues that occur with Scar King's actions throughout the film, as well as his place within a cinematic universe. Like, is that a good are those ideas good, and is that scene executed well in a vacuum? Yes. Does that therefore make the film as a whole better? To some people, no. To myself, I'd be like, I understand what you're going for, but also no. I like the Zoker drawing you did. Thank you. I'm really happy with how that turned out. I watched a bit of a vid called Jurassic World Ruined by AI. Something was pretty funny. I'm not going to lie. The one baby's here shaking her ass by a guy in a T-Rex costume out of nowhere. Yeah, there's like, I think that like certain people will associate all AI with slop. I think that AI has its uses. And in other cases, there is a reason why it's better to just learn a software or learn certain things like how to write something or music in a way that's more natural than just relying solely on AI. I think AI is a tool like anything else. And I think understanding where its limits are is important if we're going to actually have to deal with it, because I don't think AI is going to be going away anytime soon, despite what a lot of people will pearl clutch and say. And continuing to make a fuss out of it will only make the issue worse, and you're kicking the can down the line by like essentially being adamant about the issue. It's only good for shit posting and concept art visualization. I don't think it's good for concept art visualization, but shit posting, it's good for that. I'll say that.
Subjects ever in the fandom, and just like in general, because it went on to CNN all the way back in 1991 was Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah with the whole nationalist controversy.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And I discovered a live stream or an interview that I forgot some people, but I know who they are. They interviewed the director and writer for the movie, who also did Biollante.
Right.
And this was like a year before his passing, and he explained that that wasn't actually the case. He was actually, because it was like the whole like everyone thinks like Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah is supposed to be imperial nationalism, but that was not all what he intended. He was actually supposed to say that the Americans were trying to stop nationalism from happening again, which is the villains. But they're, of course, they're the villains because genocide of all of Japan using King Ghidorah. So that way, that future where Japan is like owning most of the country is obviously a bad idea.
Right.
And they also miss the context, because he also explains, which I also did research on, that Japan in the 80s was very prosperous and like getting, I don't know if the word is wealthy, but they were, their stocks and stuff, like they were doing really good.
So yeah, this is something interesting. And when it comes to Japan, and actually I'll say this also about Godzilla films, it's that Godzilla films as a whole are really interesting because they are time capsules, oftentimes to the time, like the era or the year that they came out. And oftentimes, even if they aren't always executed to perfection, making them like amazing pieces of cinema, there are small details that help you sort of understand certain ideas and sentiments that were going around in Japan at the time and were on the minds of the directors. And as a result, you kind of get a glimpse into a certain time period and a certain feeling that Japan had. And I think one reason why I like Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah so much for myself is that when it comes to the idea of Japan's prosperity, Japan and the economic like miracle that it had was something that was extremely unexpected. And Japan was doing so well that yes, other countries were talking about it at the time, America especially. And like, here's an interesting note for people who are interested in BattleTech. So BattleTech was coming around, like it was becoming a thing around the 80s. And for people who don't really know about BattleTech, there are two Asian factions in the game. There's Houses Kurita and Liao, or the Capellan Confederation and the Draconis Combine. Draconis Combine Japanese, Capellan Confederation are Chinese. And the reason why House Kurita is so prosperous and such a big antagonist in the setting of BattleTech is because at the time, because Japan was doing so well economically, the idea of Japan in the future, in the era of BattleTech, becoming this awesome superpower in the not just the global stage, but the like intergalactic stage made sense to Americans during the 80s, whereas China was not doing as well. And as a result, the Capellan Confederation is the smallest great house in the BattleTech setting. Although recently now House Kurita has lost a lot of its like holdings in a lot of areas and has become less of a dominant power, whereas you've been seeing more of House Liao become more prominent in newer aspects of BattleTech. And that does reflect what we see now, where China has become a greater superpower in the years since BattleTech's conception. And I think that that whole idea of Japan's prosperity and it buying up nations is an idea that comes from that era of history, which I like so much about Godzilla vs. Biollante, among other things. Also, I mean, was the one who left the Dorettes out there, and there was no indication that she ever questioned her colleagues why they're leaving the Dorettes in the Godzilla place back in World War II.
And that was one of the inspirations as to why that whole plot was in the movie. And people either don't know that, or they just didn't research or know the intentions of that. So to this day, you still have people who don't like the movie will throw in that it's one of the worst movies because it's supposed to be nationalistic when that's not even what the author intended, in fact.
And I think that case right there, that is going back to Canuck's point about people working back from their perceptions. I think a lot of people, like I said earlier, with the fandom being so diverse, a lot of people, especially now, who are very analytical, will come in and they will have their own political perspectives on like life in general. And then when they watch Godzilla, those political readings, like certain theories that you'll get in terms of like analysis and like college when it comes to analyzing literature and media in that sense, will dominate what it is that you'll talk about and how you perceive these films. And a lot of the same types who have issue with King Ghidorah, like Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah being nationalistic, will also say that Godzilla -1 is fascist. Same thing with Shin Godzilla, that's also hyper nationalistic in a like somewhat fascist sort of sense. And as a result, that is it. Those are the easiest examples, especially when it comes to politics, because in a lot of cases it is so hyper partisan that you're able to point it out very easily.
In fact, when I watched the movie, despite it not like being written the best, it's I never got that from it, because you can obviously have villains that have like intentions that seem good, but they go about it the whole wrong way.
Yeah,
it's like I don't understand that. It's like, yeah, they can have a point and everything. Like there is like something wrong with something, and obviously genocide is bad. Bottom text.
Right. Yeah. It's funny because like King Ghidorah 91 is the first movie I ever watched when I was like 5 years old. And when I was talking to Donnie Winter, he was like, well, that's quite a heavy movie to watch when you're 5 years old. I was like, yeah, but like I didn't understand what was happening. It was just big monsters, you know?
Yeah.
But revisiting it as an adult, like, yeah, there are like some pretty major themes going on there. But I never took the film as Japanese nationalistic. And like, if anything, I don't remember the woman from the future.
Mhm.
I don't remember what her name was, but she was trying to stop that from happening. Wasn't she? Like she was trying to stop.
Like at first she was on board, but then like the more they went on, she decided to not do that.
Right.
Like she switched sides.
Yeah. So like, I don't know how you watch that movie in good faith and come to that conclusion. You know?
Maybe they just, because of the circumstances, because the Godzillasaurus doesn't attack the Japanese army in World War II in that scene, and he's only attacking the Americans, and he's like inadvertently saving them. Like, oh, like, and they show him as a hero and everything because the whole cast is Japanese and everything. The villains are trying to stop Japan from being a super country in the future, so we got to stop them and everything. And they don't really read in between the lines and everything.
Mhm.
Maybe just because the movie, they just didn't think the movie was well nuanced or written, but I never got that. I feel like one of the most profound moments in the franchise happens to be that businessman Shindo and Godzilla looking at each other when they see each other again for the first time in like decades.
Yes.
And like Godzilla, you see Godzilla getting emotional because he remembers him, and Shindo, like, he accepts he's going to die, and Godzilla roars and then kills him
Yes.
because he doesn't recognize that he thanked him and everything. So it's also kind of ironic in a sense that he just comes back only to kill him. So
Yeah. Yeah, I really need to watch that movie again. It's a shame that the Blu-ray is like,
they have it on HBO or Max. They have it on Max now,
okay, I may have to VPN it.
or it's on Criterion, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. Yeah, it's been a hot minute, and I feel like there's a level of appreciation. I haven't seen it in over 10 years. So I think there's a level of appreciation I could definitely stand to gain from watching it more at this point in my life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like I need to do a video on that. Finally, like clearing the air about that, because that's just a thing that needs to die.
Yes.
With a lot of things, and that just bothers me, is because some people will have this type of influence, and like it's kind of scary if like nobody says anything or like contests to it. Like it's just going to run rampant, and that's why I want to like look at these points and see if they're doing it in good faith, or if they have any incorrect information. Like it is important to like take it, like not try to attack them or attack them personally and everything, but there's also people just won't take criticism and will just blame everyone else but themselves for not getting it something right, or like being called out on something of hypocrisy, or something like that. And it's happened multiple times, and it's just kind of beating a dead horse, because that's been a thing in discussions ever since Godzilla -1 came out. And then you got all these, YouTubers that aren't into the Godzilla franchise, but because of -1 and it's like a hot debate or like hot topic, they'll make videos about it, because Godzilla -1 is a very subject matter heavy film, and MonsterVerse films aren't necessarily like that, especially the newer ones. So everyone will see that as inferior, which that shouldn't be the case. It's like you can have preferences, but this, because something's more complex, doesn't make it better.
Yes. Sorry, I'm just really quickly replying to a work message. The point you said around like speaking up. There was something else that was going on in a different community about a month ago. And this one dude was getting like lots of flack because he collaborated with a really controversial creator. But he basically issued a statement where he was like, look, if I feel like somebody is putting out misinformation or harmful sentiments, then unless somebody speaks up against it, like that will be the prevailing narrative. And that's why I decided to speak up. And I worked with this other creator. They just had a conversation, which is the crazy bit. They're like, how could you have a conversation with this person? And the guy was like, I had a conversation with him because that misinformation needed correcting. And like, if nobody else did it, then that would just be what people remember. And so that's why I did it. So yeah, like I would love to see you do a G91 video, setting the record straight and, providing evidence for why.
So I agree with the sentiment of the person that he is referencing. I don't know who that is, because it feels like every other second something pops up and there's another creator who is like controversial, and a non-controversial YouTuber teams up with them, and then that audience also ends up throwing a fit because they're like, how could you talk to this person? And I'll also say this too. A lot of people who like to say -1 is fascist and King Ghidorah is nationalistic are usually the same audience members who will then throw a fit when their YouTuber that they like is wondering, oh, why are you like teaming up with this controversial person? Because oftentimes people like that do not want to have a discussion. They want to have their beliefs affirmed to them. And there's been streams, I forget which Zimcast it was. It was the political Godzilla Zimcast. If anyone is in the chat and remembers what number Zimcast that is, which I'm happy now that I'm just numbering these, because when I start to remember what Zimcast numbers they are, I'll just be able to reference each number off the top of my head. But yeah, Zimcast 56, that's what it was. It was Zimcast 56, where there's someone in the comments where they were working back from their own preconceived notions about a certain event. And I was like, you can provide me any information to say otherwise. And so much of the information was lacking to where there is a whole other form of like ideology and intents behind the claim that at that point it's like you're just ideology poisoned at that point.
I like some of these quotes that are getting thrown around, are either incorrect or perhaps missing that nuance that's needed.
Mm-hmm. And some people that are detractors of even Shin -1 think they're nationalist for some reason. When they throw out these claims, like, the buildings, the infrastructure of Japan is what's important. Then I just say, okay, well, why are they sacrificing the buildings in Shin Godzilla at the end to topple him over? And they're trying their best to minimize casualties, and they use drones to have him attack so that he can lose all his energy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, they're saying in -1 that it's okay to be a suicide pilot if you're doing it for a noble cause or something like that. And like, that's not at all what they're trying to say. In fact,
real quick in the comments, I don't think that there's a problem with having a political analysis of Godzilla films, so as long as they're actively listening on both sides of a discussion, I think that's true. But I also think that in most cases, when people want to have a political analysis of Godzilla, it's from their own politics rather than examining what the politics or at least the message of the film is itself. And that's the dangerous slope when it comes to politics, is that oftentimes it is less about what the film is saying and more what you want the film to say. And that goes into Canuck's point about how certain people will kind of walk backwards from their notions and their ideas.
They go against that multiple times, and they're going against the country. They're criticizing it heavily. Like, even I showed my grandma, who's over 80 years old,
Mm-hmm.
and she was surprised at how much they would criticize themselves that much.
Mm-hmm.
Because, GMK was a movie that was talking about how much Japan wants to forget about its atrocities in World War II.
Yes.
And that's seemingly still a problem in Japan, where they don't want to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
So I don't know how they can think that, especially when it's said out loud. And that's something that I hate from a lot of people. It's like, you just don't like that they're throwing out legitimate criticism. It's like, no, they're not. Like when they say that the red light is green and it's red, and I can show them that, and they're like, no.
Yeah, no, I got some of those comments when I reviewed -1 as well. They were like, it's just like a nationalistic piece of media. And I was like, what exactly about this movie leads you to think that? And they replied with one word, and that word was kamikaze. And then I think I tweeted out, I was like, fellas, is it nationalistic to not want to die?
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I'll say on that is that I appreciate the fact that I don't court people like that with the takes I say outside of my channel, because I don't think any of the stuff I've analyzed has ever brought someone in the comments to think like that. I would say the most things I have gotten that I don't agree with me off the cuff are people who are usually coming from my shorts, and I'm talking about what can be done with characters and writing. They're usually like, people don't go to Godzilla movies for the characters. You're asking for good writing on a Godzilla movie. I just want to see more monster action. That is the most common pushback I get when it comes to the videos I get. But I am so much happier knowing that I get those kinds of videos, those kinds of comments, rather than people being like, oh, bro, why would you review something? It's clearly nationalistic. And you're correct, Black Jira. I too lost brain cells when I heard people saying that Godzilla -1 glorifies fascism. And then it was even funnier when I saw people run defense for the people who got dogpiled for saying something stupid and getting all the backlash that they rightly deserved, and then tone policing that. I was mostly referring to political analysis being centered in the historical context the film takes place in. No, I thought that's what you're saying, but oftentimes that never is the case, unfortunately. I agree, but it's super hard.
Just because they're talking about kamikaze, and it seems like he's going to kamikaze, even though they show 10 seconds later that he doesn't kamikaze, and they show that the guy that blamed him for everything tells him to live.
Yes.
Do people just not they just block that out of their minds when they like, I don't like this, so I'm going to use something that makes it seem what the word defamation.
Defaming.
Yeah, they want to defame something. They can't like say, I don't like it because like it's not for me, or like I just didn't think it was that impactful for me, or I just didn't like the characters, I didn't like the story, or what have you. They have to make it like this is an abomination, and if you like it, you're an idiot, and other stuff. Especially there was like a British YouTuber that made like I don't know how long of a video, but on GXK. But when people pointed out when he was calling the Asian cast of the movie Indians, like, oh, you're just MonsterVerse fans and you're all R-word slurs.
Yeah, we know who that person's referenced. We know who's being referenced there. And I would say like the only problem I would say so far that I've noticed the most out of like the discussion here is that a lot of it's like vague posting to other events and other people. But yeah, like yeah, we all know it's Splatoon, just like how we know a certain black was being referenced earlier in the video, which I finally got to bringing that up. But the only reason why I do know that is because there's been a few back and forth I've had with Rick. Like not bad, not spats or anything. Good, just small discussions. But yeah, that a lot of what he said here is almost copy paste from what he mentioned about a certain black. But that's for me, that's like in the past. But there you go. They're probably referring to other people to avoid. Well, there was already drama. There's already been drama. But again, most of it's in the past, and I like to keep it that way.
Oh, fun. That's great, isn't it?
Yeah, and then people who genuinely agree with Dr. Skipper's video think that he actually was like had correct points about like MonsterVerse Godzilla and all that stuff. Like, oh, this guy's based, like he's telling the correct truth just because they don't like the movie.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's what I mean, right? It's like this epidemic of start with your conclusion, work backwards. Like if you start with the conclusion that -1 is a nationalistic film, and then you work backwards to suggest that there are kamikaze pilots in the film, and you completely ignore the emotional climax of the film where Tachibana redeems Shikishima, like, yeah, you could do that. You could come to that conclusion. You could find that evidence if you just omit this gigantic, lingering message of the film.
But as soon as you try to point that out, it's like, oh, you just don't want anyone to criticize your movie. I'm fully aware that people are going to like and dislike stuff that I like and dislike. That's fine. I'm just going to disagree and just move on with my day as long as they're respectful. That's like it's all fair and game if it's like, you know, coming from a fair place of heart. And that's not what a lot of YouTubers do, even in the Godzilla community, because some Godzilla fans are like that, where they're just kind of happy that the fandom is kind of divided.
And we also know who that's in reference to, because that was something that was said in a video a long time ago.
Because of how diverse it is. And that just makes me really upset.
Yeah, I mean, like you see this in both like the I like to think of Godzilla fandom as sort of split down the middle of like movie stuff and then like collectible stuff. But I would say like in both instances, there are people that hang their hats on like this never-ending cycle of negativity because it draws in the views, it draws in the engagement. Like Dr. Skipper's video, I don't think I've read a single positive comment in that section, and yet it's got like what, like 500,000 views. Like he's made, it's like $3 per thousand. Like he's made like $2,000 off that video because of how negative it is.
Real quickly, because Canuck's point hinges on the idea that Skipper's video is doing well because, well, Skipper's video is good because it was negative, but I am curious about something real quick, because I don't agree with the idea that because a film is doing a video is negative, that is going to draw in all the views. So Dr. Skipper. So if we go to his most popular videos, and there we go. So as something just drops out off my desk, when it comes to what he has here, a lot of his videos are centered around negativity. That is true. When it comes to his Godzilla video, It's not even, actually, we'll just count it just to be safe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. It's like not even hit top 20 for his most popular videos. But when it comes to Skipper's videos, a lot of it has to do with either like criticizing something or, in the grand scheme of it, discussing a certain topic. Because like if we're looking at all of it, I wonder if that's all his videos. Well, he has 66 videos, so these are like just all of the top videos it's gonna want to show. If we're gonna look at someone like, we'll just do Russian Badger, for example. Russian Badger like outsizes him in terms of his sub count and his video count. If we're looking at his popular stuff, his most popular video is literally like having fun, being positive about a game, and just like enjoying each other. Whereas, because I just want to go back real quick. Yeah, 27 million views versus 2.2 million. Still a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, still a lot bigger than what Skipper has to offer. Like, I'm curious if anyone's got any other content channels that we could think of that we could try to do this with, because I know actually we could do this for myself as a Godzilla channel. I'll do this. So we'll do popular. So my most popular stuff, like the most popular video on my channel, is literally me being excited for the Godzilla Magic cards. And I'm not a big fan of Magic. I wasn't a big fan of Magic's practices at the time, but it was something Godzilla related, and I was like, I loved all the art that was there, so I really wanted to discuss it, and I was excited about it. Most popular video. Same thing for like Kaiju video games. People really love the Kaiju video games. Same thing with the -1 design. This analysis video, I was really happy with how well it did. Versus video, that was also like, that was probably the most contentious thing I did. Again, super excited because that was like an exclusive trailer that I saw GFS that I wanted to show everyone. Me being super positive about a piece of media. Same thing about a Godzilla design I liked. A theory video. Something that was just fun, like shooting the shit and having fun. Like all of these, like my most popular videos. And like this is the closest to being critical, and it's because of like someone having like poor information on something. Hey, I'll give a shout out. Well, you don't have anything critical, Vic. Like you have nothing that's like really like going in on someone, so I can't really do a good distinction there. But go check out Kajinot's channel. He does good stuff. So does Minecraft World. But like even if we're doing shorts, the shorts are probably the only case where something where I'm being more negative is driving views, where there's a huge disparity between these two videos, which me being critical of GXK. But if we're looking at everything else, because I had this video here, which is more critical of GXK, which did so much worse than all these other videos. And is there anything else? Also, like most of the actor videos are still kind of critical, but this video right here, the talking about the Heisei era Godzilla design, shot up amazingly with views. It blew past all of these videos, despite being a earlier video. Because like you got all the latest stuff. There's the Heisei era video, and it outperforms everything else here. Even like these are still doing good, but like still, like when it's positive, does really well. And someone said, I think someone said Goji Center. So let's see, Goji Center. We'll do video most popular. Yeah, like almost all of their stuff, like they don't really do anything negative. So I can't really say like, oh, this is like all their positive videos for all the negative. I don't know. Dangerville would be one, because they have been doing more quote unquote critical Godzilla contents. Because I know that recently, there it is. So at the moment, this Monsterverse Big Problem video is on track with the last video they did, which I assume is probably a theory video, but still it's behind on the Titan video. It's definitely behind on the Jurassic World stuff, other than Jurassic World Rebirth stuff. Even behind on this, most popular videos. Let's see. So just talking. The fact that they have that is crazy to me. But yeah, like most of their content is revolving around just talking up the Monsterverse or dinosaurs or just Godzilla stuff in general. Like very little of their like popular videos are going to be them criticizing them, because criticism doesn't draw in the views like people think. I think actually Hidden Xperia, because I know Hidden Xperia is another channel that does a little bit of criticism and a little bit of like good things, but if we're looking at all of their contents, you have positive, because like all these, even though they're not like talking up the series, they are still talking about it in a way that's like not criticizing it. Besides this that you could say, but then I remember this video is mostly like a lore explanation as to why they are there, not really a criticism of Reach, the game itself. Downfall Bungie. So 1, 2, 3, 4 makes 8, 9. So the 10th most popular video on his channel is something that's like you could say negative because it's criticizing something. Actually, I could do this too. I forget what channel he did it on. James Rolfe. Okay, so it was on the Cinemassacre channel. But yeah, here's the thing: is like all of James Rolfe's stuff is gonna be like fun, creative video stuff. Like the Ghostbusters video, where a lot of people who aren't even fans of him talked about it, doesn't even crack because that's 4.7 million versus 23 million. So the reason why I wanted to do that stuff in its totality is because I feel that the idea that negativity draws views is not as true as people think. Like it is much if I could go around and be positive about like everything Godzilla related, I would probably draw in way more people as a result. But let us keep going.
And he's, despite knowing that all this misinformation that he responded to, he still keeps it up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even in his subsequent videos, like his pinned comment is just him saying like something Godzilla. Like he's aware. He's very self-aware about it.
Mm-hmm. And people are like, oh, stop talking about that. Dr. Skipper was just the big one. People multiple times. I know you made a video. There was this one YouTuber that does.
Oh, I also forgot to mention that I think another reason why the Dr. Skipper video was as crazy as it was is because a lot of people in the Godzilla fan base also decided to talk about it. And as a result, as we're all making videos about it, other people who may not necessarily believe what I say or what Rick says or what Canuck says or what anyone else says are going to watch the video for themselves, tell their friends about it, and as a result, they're going to keep watching the original video, or they're going to watch it via the one person that they like saw it. Like, I thought I saw F29 in the chat. If he's in the chat, I believe he did. Is he here? I'm going to be disappointed if he's not. But I thought I saw him. But F29 had done he has a playlist. And in his playlist, he has like all the people who did a video about Dr. Skipper's video on Godzilla. Let me actually see if I can go find that real quick. So there's this channel. Playlist. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Found it. Yeah, so out of the hit pieces, there's me. me. And there's Omniviewer. There's Firewood Media. But yeah, there was 67 videos of people going over his thing. And some of these like probably aren't even full on hit pieces of Skipper, but some of the, I believe the rationale behind the like adding all these videos is that they at one point in the video talked about or were explicitly about Skipper's video. So you have 67 videos with a number of different views. Like I know for myself, Zimcast 43, that had a ton of views behind it. And it's because it was something that was so contentious. And contention does drive views, but if actually we can actually look at what my most popular live streams is, I'm curious as to where the Skipper video ranked. And it does rank as the most popular stream that I done on the channel by a long shot, mind you. Like, as much as I love doing the streams, no stream has outside of the Skipper video has cracked 1,000 views in its totality. A lot of the streams have and usually do hit the triple digits in terms of their views, but and I'll show you right here. Like you have Zimcast 43 at 4.5 thousand views, and I think that like I hit double, like not just double digits because I'm hitting double digits right now for my views, but I hit like high double digits. Like I think I was hitting like 20 something or 30 something, 40 something views across the board for the Dr. Skipper video. And as you can see, 4.5K versus 811. So column debate number 1 is the second most viewed video that I when it comes to the streams, and it pales in comparison to the Skipper video. And then the first Anthony roast, the first time I slapped around a Tony, makes it in as a far third because there's still several hundred views between this and that. And again, because it was super contentious, Platoon's video ends up being the fourth most viewed, but still, once you get past the top 3, all the views start to consolidate a little bit more because Zimcast 64, pretty close to views in terms of Zimcast 52. 52, still a little bit more than 47, but 47 and 41, pretty close. Same thing, where at like every 2 videos is when the views just drop significantly each time for the most part. But as you get into here, a lot of these Zimcasts until you get down to Zimcast 6, which is, as you can see, like this is before I even perfected the idea of the thumbnails for these casts. You have all these sitting within like 400 views versus this at like 300, and then everything else hits below it, which even like a lot of the later streams have like more views, but still, I just think that's interesting to note. So does being more contentious make the stream like give you more views? Yes, but not always. It is not a out and out guarantee that that's going to be the case.
Pokemon, and apparently he does research every single time on all his stuff for his topics, but not Godzilla.
Yeah, I posted a video about it.
There are multiple YouTube videos in the past year that are just
and I remember this guy talked about I forget the name of that guy's channel, but I think it was like the video was on Baxcalibur, and since Baxcalibur is essentially the closest Pokemon to Godzilla ever at this point, that he decided to fully talk about Godzilla, because I remember he'd done a few videos in the past that mentioned Godzilla, but anytime people bring up Godzilla in their videos and their Godzilla channels, a lot of times people will go off their like the cultural osmosis ideas that they have about Godzilla rather than actually putting in the effort to do the research. Oh, there it is, Minecraft, thank you. Yeah, Loxton and Noggin.
just like the same thing, misinformation, like lacking context, and it's always -1 and 54, maybe Shin, and if you're like a very underground guy, GMK, but most people think that Showa Ip to Monsterverse is the only thing. Like
yeah, we've discussed this on several live streams as well. Like usually the average normie is gonna know that Godzilla 54 is a thing, Godzilla versus Megalon's a thing, Godzilla 98's a thing, and Shin, the Monsterverse, and -1. That's like the breadth of the normies understanding of Godzilla. The like the so-called intellectual will probably be like, there is Godzilla 54, there's the Showa series, which essentially all have the same tone as Godzilla versus Megalon. Then you have the Heisei series, which is like 54 but different. And then you have Godzilla 98. Then you have the Millennium series, which is like the Heisei series, which is like 54 but different. And then you have the Monsterverse, so you have Shin -1. That's like the so-called intellectual YouTubers understanding of Godzilla. And again, that's being generous. And I think the only reason why I'm being generous with the eras is because people know what the eras are called, but not really like the specifics of certain films.
They'll say those are the only good ones,
Yeah.
and everything else sucks. There's nothing to them because they're silly and they're goofy and like they're brain rot, and that just depresses me.
Yeah, well,
because Godzilla for the longest time and to this day still is, even in the fandom, is like, oh, why are you negative about the movie? The humans are supposed to be bad. That was a huge criticism or like a huge defense for like Godzilla King of the Monsters and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
When those movies had like mixed negative reactions from movie critics and stuff. Like that was the defenses that they were giving. And I just hate those perceptions that keep being repeated over and over and over again. Like it's not healthy. Yeah, and we're still having this to this day. It just...
Yeah, no, definitely. I'll say this. I think there's a lot of people in the fandom who like Godzilla, like ironically, rather than just actually liking the series. And people like that should be weeded out, in my opinion, without a doubt. I think that people like that add nothing to fandoms because they're really only there to poke fun at something. And then when they no longer really have something to poke fun at, they're just going to move on to the next thing. And I know they're getting close. They are getting close to the words, but those are a certain kind of T word. But we're getting close.
Evolved in a way where people think that they're talking like they're intellectual, but behind it is just disguised as a bunch of lies.
Yeah,
that's true. They also do it to get a rise out of people as well.
And things that will make people who don't think twice about it when they're listening to something, especially if that person is like has a lot of edits flashing back and forth because of the ADHD brain, to make you not think about it.
See, like that's what I'm talking about, right? Like we live in a time that incentivizes like just rapid media consumption. The person that Kaiju Kim made the video about, what is her name again? Is it Alyssa?
Alyssa Goji Geek.
So Alyssa Goji Geek, in one of her posts, said something that I thought was so true, and it was that once you venture outside the realm of Godzilla collectibles into Godzilla as a media form, you run the risk of running into pseudo-intellectualism. And I was like, wow.
I'll tell you this much. As someone who knew her for a long time and had these discussions with her, this was something that she always had an issue with. And it was something that we talk about where there was not a whole lot of people doing video essays or deep dive discussions about the Godzilla films. And recently, when it came to the video that Kim made on the topic, and I'd asked Alyssa for more context because I was going to cover it in Zimcast before I left for G-Fest, a lot of it spanned from people who were getting mad at her because she negatively reviewed GXK. And yeah, so the problem is that there is a lot of, and this word's not used in this video, there's a lot of toxic positivity that came about around this film. And because people liked it for fun reasons, and you're going to have people on the side of GXK, they're going to be like, oh, well, the humans are meant to be deep. I just want to enjoy the film. We're defending it, and other people who are trying to defend it in a deep way. And the only reason why those people are on the same side is because they like the movie. But I remember there was a certain a comment from her blog when she was talking about it that she showed me, and it was someone like being a douchebag to her because she didn't like GXK. I want to see if I can find it, if she had sent it to me or something else. But yeah, like that nothing to do with like a lot of people that Rick is alluding to, and everything to do with a lot of the toxic positivity that came around because of like the what in a ways feels like a cult of personalities that surrounded that film. But this is gonna probably take a little bit of time. And if anyone has any questions while I do look for this, I will be happy to take a look-see and see if I can find it. The plot thickens. Yeah, the plot thickens. The plot definitely thickened a lot when that stuff happened. That was fun. When No Way Home came. When No Way Home, everyone glazed the F out of it. Years later, you find more videos on all this discussion on how bad the film was and how nostalgia baity it was. Yeah, I think that that's true. I also think that generally a lot of people like wanted something. They wanted to enjoy something, and for what it was, I think that No Way Home is a fun film, but there is indeed a lot of problems with it. Up there it is. I just want to read it because there's a little bit of stuff. This is a fuck push to vacate the fan, pursue my own things. Yeah, so okay. So for context, this was her blog, and this was the movie review she did revolving around GXK, and that was the verdict that was given. And I do remember that there was a comment there, and it looks like the comment probably she just purged it, but it was sent to me via a DM from back then when I was covering this originally, and I'm not gonna post it because there's other personal stuff that's in the DMs there, and I can't even really say anything that the comment originally said because that probably could be my nuts kicked off YouTube or just the video taken down, and we can't have that. And one of the persons, they are in the back. I am probably just gonna go through the rest of the video before I let them on. We'll probably have a chit chat for about 10-20 minutes or so, and then we'll end off the stream. So for the person in the back, and you can hear me, just hold on hope, please. Oh, I just realized I did not have the thing back on there. Silly me. I'm a silly goose, aren't I?
Media consumption. The person in one of her posts said something that I thought was so true, and it was that once you venture outside the realm of Godzilla Collectibles into Godzilla as a media form, you run the risk of running into pseudo-intellectualism. And I was like, wow, that is a really concise way to like summarize like this epidemic of people who come in like wrecking balls and think that they know everything they're talking about. And I remember when you, me, and Mike.
Yeah, so I'm happy that I circled back around to this. So was that some of what Alyssa's grievances were? Yes, not all of them, but neither here nor there, and not my story to tell. I'm glad the fandom was able to have a meaningful conversation about horrible behavior. I just hate that it happened at her expense and others. That is true. However, I think an issue I have with it is that this was something that she had voiced a long time ago, and I think had certain people cared enough at the time, this discussion would have happened years ago. Because even when I wanted to refresh my stuff with her regarding certain like grievances that she had, a lot of it was information I still had access to. Like there's certain screenshots that she wanted to show that I still had access to, and I had like gotten access like back when I was still a teenager. So like I think that was good. The fandom had a discussion, but the problem is a lot of people who really like held the line on the topic, if they cared about it, they would have seen her original videos and her original discussions about these things long before Kim's video would have happened, and maybe things might have been differently.
Mike started getting attention for using the word grifter by Zim.
There I am.
And it was started getting attention and think that they know everything they're talking about. And I remember when you, me, and Mike started getting attention for using the word grifter by Zim. And it was just like what else do you call these people? They
I guess tourist. Because
Sure.
because he was I guess I'm friendly with Zim. Like we have our back and forth, but I guess he still uses that to his live streams to this day. But
I did use here. The reason why I had to do it was because I felt it was relevant, and it is. I don't use it in ill will. I think it is a fun video. I'm just happy that I made it. But yes, we have come to the grifter tourist words. So when it comes to using the words grifter or tourist, the traditional idea of a grifter is someone who is presenting or providing some type of service, wholly not believing in the idea itself or the product itself, and are just trying to scam you out of money. So when a lot of the people that, because originally it was Mike's Monsters who had flashed a bunch of different creators on the screen and say that they were kind of grifters, and not even him specifically saying that those people were grifters, but essentially I feel like he was calling them grifter adjacent because he used the word in his video and used them as poor examples of fandom discussion. A grifter is someone where I believe that they don't believe anything that they are saying in the videos they are making. They're wholly trying to make money off of their audience. And I believe that in most cases, it is exceptionally hard for anyone to be a grifter, quote unquote, because in a lot of cases, the people that you are seeing who are making these videos that you don't like, they just have different opinions to you and they are able to make money off of it. It's pretty simple in that case. Versus tourists, where I think tourists, normies, same thing essentially, are people who are interested in a fandom because it is popular or there's a lot of hubbub around it in the zeitgeist and they want to have that acceptance, which is mentioned earlier in the video. And I think that that is relevant to a minor degree. And I think that you can be a tourist and also a grifter, but I think it'd be very hard for someone to grift off of a fan base because you have to put in, especially as a YouTuber, because you have to put in so much effort into pretending that you like something when in fact you just hate it. And a lot of cases, you could say that certain people who made positive videos and then there's like another video that they do down the line saying like, oh, I tried to do this, but I actually was just hating it. You could say that those people were grifting. And I'd say that that's kind of accurate. But at a certain point, if they stop making content because they just don't want to make content anymore about it and they stop doing it, then in a certain way, you could say they've lost their quote unquote grifter status. But I think that in a lot of cases, the people that were referred to as grifters or tourists are people who are variety channels. And I think that in those cases, they are doing it because it is a important talking point that is relevant to greater pop culture as a whole. And that is why it is being discussed. But I think a good example of someone, and I just want to remove this right here, an example of someone who is a tourist without a doubt. And it's not the Grimuklia, however you say his name is. It's not him. But when you see who I'm referring to, I think you'll agree with me. And let me pull that up again. Organized chaos. I think organized chaos is a Godzilla tourist because he has a video about 2014, which came out around 2014 when it came out. Same thing for King of the Monsters. Same thing, talked about Godzilla versus Kong, and he did one on Godzilla X Kong: The New Empire because they are currently popular things to talk about. Same thing with Godzilla -1. Once it was leaving theaters, he had to talk about it because it was popular to talk about Godzilla -1 at the time. And since Quick Chaos's brand is being anti woke or anti Comicsgate, things of that nature, he had to do a video talking about Critical Drinker because he is ideology poisoned, and he has to do the tourist even and be like, Critical Drinker is right about Godzilla -1, and that's provocative to his audience because he doesn't agree with Critical Drinker and he wants to do everything in his power to paint this person in the most terrible light possible. So to his audience member who likes his content and believes everything that he regurgitates, they're going to be like, oh, what do you mean by that? And really, all this video is, and we saw this in the Zimcast where I talked about it, this guy, is really just going to be like, yeah, that's true. And really the only value that this video has about, like, when it comes to his content is that it draws in more viewers and it gets him an upload. Outside of that, it is completely meaningless. And for someone who criticizes people like the Critical Drinker for getting facts wrong about certain movies, in his Godzilla X Kong live stream that he did, there was misinformation about certain Godzilla films. And same thing went for his King of the Monsters video and his 2014 video. So really, it has less to do with him wanting to actually be correct or like have good discussions about things, and everything to do with the cultural type of stuff. And I'll say this, like, people like Actual Fandom, Organized Chaos, none of these people were people that Mike's Monsters or Kaiju Connect ever talked about. It was people that were easy targets, like what's his name? This British guy. Well, it's not Adam Does Movies. Mr. H, Mr. H, and a few other people. Off the top of my head, I don't remember. But it was those people, which were the easy targets to talk about when it came to quote unquote grifters. Yeah, heel versus. I don't think he talked about heel versus babyface. Zeno.
I guess like he just thinks like the word grifter isn't in definition because he's like, oh, you're getting money or something from it. And I guess like some of them are, but some of them aren't. But it's more tour. Yeah, well, it's tourism. Like it's just bad faith tourism.
Yeah.
For all these, and I think it's worse when this stuff is coming from quote unquote Godzilla fans that keep sticking around to do that.
Yes.
And it just that doesn't make anything any better.
No, I definitely agree with that.
And I even would say with the whole collecting thing, like it's seeped into that as well because we had the whole. It was like NECA versus Monster Arts for a while, but it wasn't as bad as it is with Haya versus Monster Arts.
No, I'm just glad that now that Haya's here, the magnifying glass is like no longer on Super 7.
Oh yeah.
And now it's Haya versus Monster Arts because like Super 7 was getting dragged into conversations that they had no business being in, and I'm just kind of glad it's moved on. Apparently though, it used to be really bad. It used to be like Bandai versus Trendmasters.
Really? I wasn't there for that.
Yeah, well, neither was I. But yeah, my friend MM, who he's been on the channel a couple times, like he's been around the block, and he's like, it has always happened. It's always been this way. People will always find two different companies to throw at each other and like just divide themselves.
And they just don't realize that they're working for the same thing.
Yes.
Especially when they're under Toho. It's like, oh, we got to stop the Monsterverse. We got to stop them from making movies. And like, you do realize Toho's like profiting from both at the end of the day. They're the ones that they're the reason why this stuff exists in the first place. Monsterverse is the reason why we're still getting funded all this new stuff that we never got in the 2000s.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Even in the 2010s, it wasn't as big as it is now.
Yes, like the Monsterverse has been undoubtedly a net positive for even the classic Toho fan. And
especially when we get those anniversary films, like I've spoken about how terrible they've been about like quote unquote releasing them and everything, but I guess they're getting on Blu-ray and everything, but like they were hiding them for years. Like, well, you can have it, watch it for a week and then they're gone and everything. And like their last three were Kickstarter, so it was like they're taking money and then running away with it. So
yes,
but I guess at the end of the day, I guess now that people can watch them if you get that Blu-ray or something, or if you know where to look. And like people are getting a bunch of classic stuff. We get stuff for kids like Godzilla and Chibi Godzilla. I know people are like they want a video game and stuff, but I guess there's still options available. But
for sure,
I don't want to say people are ungrateful because like, oh, there's not.
I think real quick, I just want to say this. when it comes to like toy discussions, this is me moving completely outside of my expertise because I have a lot of friends who are way more into the collecting space than I am. But from my limited understanding and being as charitable to the people who pit companies against each other, when it comes to like Super 7, like their Ultimates line, and Haya's line, and NECA's, for example, versus Monster Arts, the way I see it from all of those lines, which those companies are all providing, is highly posable Godzilla figures. I think that when it comes to people who are bashing other companies, I believe that the intention that they have behind it is that they want fellow fans to get the figure that has the best quality for the cheapest price possible. That is what I believe most people are probably looking for when it comes to discussing like pitting each company against another. That is the best faith interpretation. And I think that, again, a lot of people, and we've mentioned this, children, people who are on the spectrum and are not as emotionally well regulated as other people, and just people who are just kind of a-holes to begin with, you get all these people together, getting them all talking about something they're hyper passionate about. And especially when you get like the idea that, oh, you're doing this because you care about other people, that is going to cause people to become even more hypersensitive to trying to like justify their arguments. And I think that a lot of people also probably assume that, oh, if like all these lines don't do well, then Toho or like a company may like, I'm not going to want to pay for this license if we're not making money off it, or like, oh, all of these lines are providing very similar things. So then if Toho's not able to like justify doing all these licenses, then Toho's going to want to pull out more projects. And I think that maybe to some degree or another, certain fans do fear Godzilla going back into obscurity like it was during the mid-aughts before 2014. And I understand that fear entirely. Like, I know for myself, I am always wary whenever I see like, oh, this new Godzilla thing comes out, this new Godzilla thing's coming out, because I'm like, it's probably not something I'm going to buy. I just hope that there's enough people that are going to buy it to where it justifies the cost of it being made. And as a result, we still getting more stuff that I enjoy. And that is always something in the back of my mind that, oh, well, if this doesn't do well, then we may not get this. And I was really hoping or looking forward that maybe they might do this. But since this project fell through, they don't see the point in releasing this project that I may like. But that's not something I verbalize as much because I'm just not as big a collector as a lot of these toy channels are. And I don't have as much stake in it because, well, as someone who's got like a bunch of other bills that I need to pay, I am very particular about like what it is that I plan on spending my money on. Like GFest being a big example of this. I real quick, Xena says, good luck with stream. Thank you, Xenodrome. Thank you for sticking on. Anytime that when I do GFest stuff, I have a pretty good idea as to like what figures I'm not going to buy before I go to GFest, because I'm like, I'm going to want to grab this, I'm going to want to grab that. I have this much space in my suitcase, so there's this and that. Generally, this is how much that they go for. And as a result, I need to be wary of how much money I'm bringing with me. And then maybe I might grab something that I wasn't expecting to see there. And that's part of my pull. But yeah, I very much have to ration out what it is that I want to grab versus other people who have either more disposable income or a lot younger and they have their parents buying all that stuff for them. So like everyone's at a different point in their life and there's different things that they consider when they come into these discussions. Wrong one. I do want that 94 Winston Godzilla. If I could get a Bandai Movie Monster series, Godzilla Stan Winston, 1994. My God, that'd be perfect. I'd love that.
Not enough stuff. Like I have to wait to hear about the Monarch show and the GXK sequel and -1, 2 or -2, and like that's it. It's like you guys had nothing for a decade. Like you at best you had Godzilla Unleashed in 2007, and that's it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's that we need to say that it's ingratitude, but But I think it's
I know people are going to say like, "Oh, this is garbage stuff. Why do I have to be grateful for all this garbage?" Like, okay, if you don't like it, I guess. But at the same time, it's just there's more opportunities now more than ever for stuff like that to get made that you do like.
Yeah, and so this is the point.
Do you have Roxanne's 94 Goji? I do not, unfortunately. I've been saving up to do it, and then like when I kind of have enough money to get it, I've got other like stuff in the way that I do need to spend money on, so that I'm like I have to put that off to the side. But I will get it. I do plan to get it. That and the Logatosaurus. Those two things I definitely want to get. Probably I might, if anything, because it is something less likely to get an official figure out of. I might get the Dogatosaurus first before I get the 94 Goji.
Point I was trying to make. We don't have to go into ingratitude, but the people's inability to just walk away from stuff that is not for them, that they don't particularly like, without needing to like degrade it.
And that's what I was trying to make a point on one time, but I just wasn't ready to talk about it. But I wanted to like say that even if you don't like the later MonsterVerse films, I was talking to someone's like, are you happy that at least they are getting new projects out there and new fans and stuff that are come to appreciate the franchise as a whole? And I guess I didn't really, because I wasn't prepared to like talk about it that way, so it didn't come out that way, and so they kind of trashed on me for it. It's like, oh, but, well, it's a bad movie and stuff like that. So I was like, I don't care if everything that comes out there is just a mountain of trash. And like, I know that I've done the same thing with Star Wars. Like, I don't care about Star Wars anymore. I still love the movies and shows that I do. I just left it because I don't like the stuff that's being put out, and I don't like the fandom. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
So if you're it's like, I got to complain that not everything is good anymore, then like, do yourself a favor and leave. It's like, you don't have to be here. Yeah. Like, well, I want everything to be good. The thing I love, I want it to be good and everything. It's like, not everything lasts forever. It's like, I'm at some point, maybe everything Godzilla that comes out, I hate. But just because that stuff sucks doesn't mean the stuff that I love isn't there. Like, at the end of the day, this is just fictional media. Yep. Like, you can go and find something else that you like. Sure, you can still talk about the stuff, but it's not healthy. And it does nothing, and it only ruins the people who are still into it. Your whole attitude, especially when you're going at it with bad faith, is only making things worse for them.
I think real quick, because I remember Rick sent me something that was related to, I think, this timestamp in the video. I just want to find that real quick, because I feel that was relevance. Was it at this point? Yeah, we passed it. Okay, cool. I want to quickly read through what he had said. However, it did happen to take off your mind. So I tried to explain it a little bit better. And I know he's in the back, so I'll be able to explain it for. And like I'm saying that if you can enjoy that particular franchise, I should try and seek something else. I'll say you can't share just something and saying there. No, it's not gonna change. It's a bad. Okay, yeah. So when it comes to the idea of staking with something, even though it's bad, I think that even though there is good media that is present within a franchise that you can still go back to, ultimately, and for the sake of argument, hypothetically, if every single piece of media past the media you like is bad, there's still going to be an emotional effect that you will have, because there is a level of investment that you've had in this franchise that will to some degree feel wasted, because it's just no longer something you can engage with anymore in an enjoyable manner. Like, especially if you grew up with something as a kid, became an adult, you still liked it, and it's just not something you enjoy anymore. Even though people say it's fictional media, it is still a part of your identity that you will have to, that you will lose. And that is something that I think from a Western standpoint, we take for granted just because worse things are happening in other places. I think that it comes from a place. I don't think Rick's doing this himself, but I think that a lot of people say this when they are dealing with content that they don't have to worry about getting bad, or they're enjoying everything that's happening. I know one of my friends has liked a whole lot of Star Wars content, and I have logic broed him in a lot of cases where I'm like, this reason is not good. But there is no way that he can understand as to why I am unsatisfied with what is there. And there's been so many times where he's like, oh, well, did you enjoy this? And I'm like, no, for this, and that reason. And to him, all this new, and it's Star Wars related. So a lot of the Star Wars content is like this. All the Star Wars content is so different. It's so unique from one another, but you're not liking any of it. I don't know what the problem is. Like maybe the problem is you, and he's said that a couple of times, and then he'll kind of fall back and apologize and be like, "Oh, I'm not saying there's a problem with you. It's just like I don't know what I can do." And I think he's saying it in the best faith way possible because, at least in this case, he's a friend of mine. Like I went to college with him, and he is saying like he wants me to be happy, and I appreciate that he wants me to be happy, but there is a mountain of decisions that a franchise has taken that there would be many, many decisions that would have to undo the damage that would make me want to like something again. I know for myself, I did bring up BattleTech earlier. I do enjoy BattleTech. I like a lot of the older stuff. And because it was a franchise I did not grow up with, I have a lot more time to invest in the older material that was good and enjoy it. Whereas the older BattleTech fan who has been with it for a long time, they have probably had all the same discussions thousands of times that I'm just having now. The joy that they get out of that I'll get out of painting my first mini or have my first game is something that they probably experienced multiple times. And as a result, I will, for a longer time after them, enjoy certain aspects of that franchise than them because they've just had more experiences with it longer. I know for myself, I've fallen massively out of love with Halo. A lot of my interactions with Halo come from mods and fan art. And people can tell me, well, you're still going to have all the old games to go back to. And that's true. But granted, these games are like, some of these games are either nearly as old as I am or like not that much younger than I am. And I've been playing them for about that long. And even though every game is going to be different, there is still a level of similarity that's going to come from just that amount of time spent with something. And even as much as I've loved it, I am going to get burnt out on it. Like Skyrim is another example of it. I know a lot of people don't like Skyrim who are older Elder Scrolls fans for legitimate reasons, but I know for myself, like I enjoy playing Skyrim at certain times of the year, and as a result, I'll just play through it. But even with all the infinite mods that I could install, all the different build ideas I could do, the role playing I could have, that is still a finite amount of content that I will be able to engage with. And at a certain point, I'm just going to get burnt out and I'm just going to stop playing for a little bit. But in the case of Skyrim, at least I have the luxury to where I kind of know when that itch hits me and I know when to pull away from it. And I think a recent thing for me is Elden Ring. I really like Souls games. Elden Ring is fun. I primarily like it because of PvP. And the PvP has been mostly pushed to the side in Elden Ring. And because of the way the game is made, it has made a massive part of the community and something I feel built the community and allowed the franchise to get as big as it is to fall to the wayside. And I could, hypothetically, keep trying to do more like builds, do what I can to just play Elden Ring and have fun with it. But ultimately, I realize that I don't have all the time in the world, and there's other things I could be doing. I could spend with my time, like making my own stuff, writing my books, working on my games, stuff like that. But not everyone's like that, and not everyone's gonna have the drive to be like, you know what, I'm gonna do my own thing with blackjack, hookers, and stuff like that. So that's my little spiel about that. I like some recent Star Wars stuff, but not all of it. And at the same time, that doesn't mean that I'm not aware of the flaws that Star Wars is not a good place at the moment. Yeah, and I think a lot of people like don't realize that like when there's people are disengaged from a fandom, it's because of a lot more issues than just one or two pieces of bad media.
And going forward, when people want to get into it, that ultimately hurts everyone.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. I've got about 15 minutes before I got to get ready for my next meeting. Did you want to touch on the stuff that happened with Unknowingly at all?
Yeah, I don't know, maybe you can actually make this a video. I don't know, you can cut it up and stuff. I'd be fine with it, but the whole Unknowingly thing, I know beforehand, the first time before he was attacked, it was like maybe a week or so ago. Like I felt uneasy about like the whole man in the suit thing because everyone was like complaining, oh, he's using Haruo Nakajima. I was like, well, he didn't use Haruo Nakajima. I just thought it was a bit weird because the whole subject matter was a bit odd. And they did use the King Kong suit actor's real name. I forgot. I don't know how to pronounce it. Shorichi Hosei or something like that in the King Kong video. And like some things he got wrong. Like he said like there's a Mothra suit that's not accurate. There wasn't any Mothra suit for Mothra vs. Godzilla. It was a puppet and stuff like that. But I guess you could say alternate. It just kind of was a bit odd that he would use real life stuff.
Yeah.
And like he would get some things wrong. It just kind of felt uneasy. But someone told me that that's not the intention. And then I guess someone, I don't recall who, so I'm not going to say anything about who did it, but apparently they did a Patreon reviewing it. I guess they didn't like the man in the suit. And then those people started attacking him. And then that's when the first instance happened. I believe it was in 2023. And then I guess MapHappic went up on it and like he made his own video before he quit and everything. And now I guess it's still happening to this day. And like, I guess people made quote unquote accusations about him that are just stupid, I guess. And I guess he canceled it because of the whole toxicity thing. And then a bunch of stuff happened. And then like he attempted to take his own, life again. And he went to the hospital and people were doubting it because like people were saying, oh, it's a boy who cried wolf thing because he's done this before. And I just think this is a 15-year-old kid. Like, even if you think that this is some sort of situation like that, this is serious, especially considering their age. Like, even if they came out with it, you still shouldn't like take it like that, especially if you're wrong. And it just says so much. But I'm glad they're okay, and that they are just fine with the people now. But they're just don't want to deal anything with the man in the suit now. They just canceled, and I know people are happy. The people who hated it are happy that it's gone. I don't really feel any other way. Like one of them was because he used AI images, but hey, he's just a kid, I guess. But I don't know.
Yeah, so full disclosure, Man in the Suit, it's not for me. Like, I watched it.
I like some ideas, but at the same time, I just don't like all the inaccuracies it has.
Yeah, it's not for me. But at the same time, like, it's just a kid that's making some fan content, right? And so there was I think that this ties into a lot of the things that we've already talked about, like people's inability to just walk away from things they don't like, from people who just like feel the need to be so negative, so overtly negative. But
because they see Man in the Suit, because I know it's like when they see videos like of the old Godzilla behind the scenes or talking about the old movies with Suitmation, it's like you'll see people in the comments like, oh, it's the Man in the Suit, and like they think the Man in the Suit ruined everything. They ruined Godzilla for them. It's like they had to have a scapegoat for everything. And
what's it called? There's Ericzilla. I wasn't even expecting to be in here, Eric. But the interesting thing, I'll say this about Unknowingly and the whole Man in the Suit stuff. Like, Man in the Suit, never really watched it. I saw the MatPat thing about it. I think that the thing that rubs me wrong about what MatPat said in response to people being upset about the Man in the Suit thing is because that does feel touristy of him to be like, oh, you guys are mad about your little franchise thing. Like, it wasn't even like he did any investigative stuff or talked about like, oh, more than likely the people who are upset about it are also probably kids who are taking it way too seriously. And I think most of the people who like even did the document on Unknowingly were also like around the same age as he was. So it was like a bunch of 15-year-olds trying to slander a 15-year-old because ultimately, especially nowadays, everyone's a moral busybody. Everyone wants to cancel another person over something. And it's like oppression Olympics. And to see who can be like, oh, look at this Batman. I took down a Batman. Do I get my trophy now? Am I now part of like the people of the good cancelers? It's like, it is annoying to say the least. And I bet there are probably a few adults who were like, you're being disrespectful to Godzilla. But I think a lot of the people who were like going after Unknowingly were probably around the same age as he was. And yeah, I think a lot of kids don't know when to walk away. So I think Canuck is right in that sense. I do like, what's it called? It says, dude, I feel bad for the guy and I hope he's doing okay, but not gonna lie, I was kind of confused when the news broke. Yeah, I was confused as well because it just wasn't a circle I ran with. And I know Eric did the video about Unknowingly, but like it screams to me as a lot of teenage drama that got out of hand. And I think the only reason why it got out of hand as much as it did is because Unknowingly, unlike a lot of like the YouTuber drama that I was a part of back in the day, involved a YouTuber, in Unknowingly's case, who was vastly like he was vastly bigger than any of us at the time, and as a result, like the amount of pushback that he got was way too big for his like size and for his age. And I think that Eric, you're right that like he definitely was a little too sensitive to the feedback he got, but I think that's also just the nature of him being like a younger kid. Because I just want to quickly check unknowingly what's his sub count. Yeah, so like 192. And how many views did the Man in the Suit get? Yeah, 2.8 million. Another billion, like 100,000. But compare it to like all the stuff that happened, like all the dramas that I was a part of, I feel that like is way like what we went through was way smaller and then like all of the views and probably all the comments that I unknowingly got. And yeah, I do agree with you as well, Eric, that need like definitely probably had some of his own fans go after people as well. And I think that like that goes to show that like certain kids around his age probably are better at handling criticism and some aren't. And I think that always then raises the question is like how old should people be if they're going to access the internet or be able to have this kind of fame and stuff like that.
It's like everything has to be blaming someone else because they ruined whatever it is that they are emotionally attached to. And to me, the only way to get by in life is by saying you don't like this thing because it sucks and move on. Mm-hmm. Like emotionally get attached to the things that you love, that embrace you. That doesn't mean that you can't have negativity, but having too much negativity and having it be your whole vendetta against everything online and just in general is just not good. It doesn't do any good for you. It doesn't do good for anyone else. And it just drags everyone else down.
Yeah.
And that's something that people should have done with the Man in the Suit. But
absolutely.
This is just a learning lesson for people if they're willing to listen to this or anyone else that's willing to say it.
Yeah. I like if driving like a 15-year-old kid, pushing him over the edge to the point where he genuinely attempts to take his own life, if that is not a wake-up call to like maybe try to not be such a toxic piece of shit online, like I don't know what is. I truly am at a loss. Like what is the other thing? What is the next most intense thing that gets people to like maybe reflect and take a minute before you say something?
I guess gooning. It's either be negative or goon.
Yeah, there's two states of being. Yeah,
that's pretty much it. It's just depression and gooning.
Or depression while gooning.
I guess.
So I think the Man in the Suit like ties into a lot of things we've talked about. I also think that it's and there was someone on Discord, I think their name is Mosumi, who put this together very much more eloquently than I'm going to say it. But they were saying that the Man in the Suit is a classic case of like how the young human mind is not built for popularity and like fame, I guess, or infamy, depending on how you look at it, and how this was just a person who likes Godzilla, made this like thought, oh, I want to make like this little cute, not cute, but like this little analog horror shorts, and maybe some people will see it, maybe they'll like it, and it just explodes overnight to become this huge, massive thing that all of a sudden millions of pairs of eyes are on it, and a lot of it is good comments, a lot of it is like, what the hell is this, right? Like that takes a toll on a person. Like I don't know what your experience has been like online, right? Well, I know a little bit, but like, you know, I like to think that you and I, if we get a nasty comment thrown at us, we can bear it, but there's still a moment where you're kind of like, oh, that doesn't feel good, right?
I've had a lot of stuff like that, especially I've had my experiences, a lot of personal stuff, so I won't get into that, but I have no doubt that's going to do a huge toll on someone like unknowingly, especially at his age.
Like 15, and if you go back to like 2023, potentially 13. Right? Like
13.
That is insane that somebody would be subject to that much attention in such a short span of time, and that people would go further knowing a year and a half later that he's a minor, that he's a young kid, and still throw this vitriol his way.
And people are like, oh, but he can't hide behind the fact that he's underage and stuff, so we can criticize him. Like, some things he can, and it's not like he's hiding, it's just that he doesn't know any better, especially like emotionally and maturely.
Yeah, like again, I don't know about you, but I don't know if I was like fully developed in my brain until I was like maybe 25, 25, right? Like he was 13 or 14 or he's 15. Like, holy shit.
If you don't like something, you gotta make sure that they understand that you don't like it.
it's like the Ricky Gervais skit about the guitar lessons. You ever seen that one?
No.
That joke where he's like, it's like a public flyer advertising guitar lessons, and so you snip the phone number off and you call the phone number just to tell them that you don't want guitar lessons instead of just moving on with your day.
Mm-hmm.
It's insane.
Humanity can be amazing and worse at the same time. There's no either way about it. Anything that something is created with noble intentions can always be ruined by someone for the wrong intentions. Like they can make it something else, like a pencil. And then you have the John Wick scene from chapter 2.
Yeah, that's true. You can use a knife to make your family dinner. You can use it to commit the worst crimes imaginable.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, I definitely feel you there. In these last few minutes, was there anything else you wanted to touch on today?
I'm not saying that you can't like have discussions or like look at things in an objective manner, like things that do happen in the movie, like intentions and everything. It's like ultimately at the end of the day, the conclusion that someone brings to it should be based on all of that. And ultimately just, you shouldn't take it so seriously to the point where it's always a superiority complex that people have.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of a thing that's we've been talking about.
Yeah, it's just like the assertiveness, right? Like, I like to think that, how do I want to say this? I do believe in the things that I say online, that I share, but I don't want to be so arrogant as to assume that I'm always correct. Like I'm open to having conversations with folks, and I'm even open to having my mind changed. Like I don't mind chatting with someone who has a different opinion with me, and I think you don't mind that either, as long as it's respectful and healthy.
If everyone agreed on the same thing, it would be boring.
Yes.
Sure, there's always like a system to like define everything, but no, it's never going to be perfect. Like we could try to be perfect, but ultimately at the end of the day, we are creatures that share our experiences and communicate through expression.
Mm-hmm.
And that expression can be biased. And biasm, there is like a level where you should like hold it and like look at everything before you say something.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, there's more nuance to it than just the everything I say is right, or like everything according objectively I say is right. Mm-hmm. There's a middle that I don't think people are willing to see because it's too much effort, and ultimately it becomes very philosophical at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, that's kind of what this whole thing is. That it is just the emotional response to how people communicate and consume this type of stuff and how they react accordingly to it. And a lot of the stuff that I bring up is just not mature and not healthy, mm-hmm. and should be something that's changed. That I wish more Godzilla YouTubers that I wish I can talk to can bring this to the attention, because I feel like if more people, including the larger YouTubers that have influence, can say that, I feel like we would at least make a difference in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Well, here, I'm just going to end this.
There we go. And that ends it off there. And he's been in back the entire time. And let me pull that off. And Rick goes in the back.
Here's me with my OBS capture eye.
Considering the fact that he's been back there the entire time, I wouldn't be surprised.
I took a shower and I made some food.
Either like it's probably away from his device. And I know Canuck actually had texted me earlier saying that he was going to be on the stream.
Hello?
So I'll probably tell him thanks later.
What the frick?
Go. But I'll probably do some games for a little bit. And if Rick comes on, then nope, we lost him. He might join back on in a second. But what I will do is that people have any questions for me, I will I'll just get to play some games and stuff while I wait for. Oh nope, there he is.
I thought I thought the mic was working.
Can we hear the Rick?
Can you hear me? Hello?
If you're saying anything, Rick, I do not hear you at all.
What the frick?
Mic settings. Nope. It's nothing on my end. That's
This is
weird.
impossible. What?
Let me do this in the background while we wait. And if anyone's got any questions, feel free to ask.
Ah.
I still do. I forgot
the
I need to buy
frick?
that. I just been tight. Stream can hear you, Rick. I can. Oh, you can hear him on stream?
Oh, come on. These guys in the chat can hear me,
That's
but not
so
use them?
weird. Okay. Let me, in that case, remove him.
Perhaps he just doesn't know how to work technology, guys.
Huh. Camera, audio. Silence.
You guys like Mountain Dew Zero? I
There
love
we go.
some
Okay.
Mountain Dew Zero.
That's. I'm so I can hear you now.
Ah, no.
I'm so confused why, for some reason, I just clicked off my audio feed and put it back on, and it worked just fine.
All right.
I don't know.
Oh, anyways, let me rewind. It is I, the guy with the OBS eye on my profile.
The squirrel Sharingan, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
But welcome, D-Rec. Ready? I will slap you, boy. We don't like them 98ers around these pure parts.
Did you know that 1998 had two really questionable adaptations of the two most famous monsters ever?
Oh, really? We know one of them. What's the other one?
The Mighty Calm.
Oh, right. Oh, boy. That was in 1998? That's when that
Yep.
came out?
Yeah, it was made to capitalize on Godzilla and Maijo-yon.
Oh, okay. I thought that came out like 96, 97, but
No, it was done just for that. It
interesting.
was under Warner Brothers.
No, I knew it was like under Warner Brothers, but okay, interesting. I probably knew that was the right date, but I just forgotten.
What's so funny is that when you play the first like 30, 45 seconds, it's actually not that badly animated, and then the rest of the budget went away. And it went to hell, and they got I don't know. I got a guy in my server who's a big Little Mermaid fan, but they got Jodie Benson to play Andero.
Oh, that I did remember.
And they got the Sherman brothers who did like music for the Jungle Book to do the music for it. And it's like really, really, really bad.
Oh boy.
Like I don't believe people when they say, "Oh, the MonsterVerse Calm movies are the worst." When I watched all three animated direct-to-video King Kong movies with my friends multiple times, so they could all watch it with me.
Interesting. I definitely, what's it called?
I mean, to be fair, you like them.
I'd have to watch the animated one, not the Mighty Kong, but like the ones that were made from the animated series.
Oh yeah, I love that the DVD. You don't really get that DVD like artwork, but one of them you see online is like it has state-of-the-art 3D animation, and it's like the worst, ugliest thing you've ever seen.
I think that's the Atlantis one.
That's Return of the Jungle.
Oh, it's Return of the Jungle.
The Atlantis one is the one that was still 2D.
I thought Atlantis was the one that was 3D, but
it was. It's funny because when I was doing my whole Monkey Month like compilation thing, it's like, so like King of Atlantis came out like early 2005, and then Return of the Jungle came out in 2006. Because Return of the Jungle was there to like bank off the success of the extended edition of Peter Jackson's King Kong. So you're going from in my compilations for stuff, it's like it goes from Mighty Kong and the King of Atlantis to Peter Jackson's King Kong, and then it just goes back to this garbage CGI animated movie that's in 4x3.
Nah,
it's just funny to me.
No, I vibe with that. But when it comes, obviously you were kind of in the back for some of it. How much of the stream did you listen to versus how much we kind of came into on it that was late?
When you started talking about the Leave fan base thing, I had to go take a shower.
Okay, that's fine. But you were in the back for like a while.
Yeah,
I know.
I was there listening.
Out, so peace, sea monsters. But any thoughts of your own about like what I've said in general?
I don't know what you said regarding the leave the fan base thing. Like, if you don't like it, then leave thing, and I gave context to why.
Yeah, we went. Well, what's it called? I skimmed through what you had said to me, and then gave kind of my thoughts on it. My opinion is that like, I think that like people generally take for granted the investment that people do have in media, and don't realize that it's gonna affect you a little bit more when you're leaving a fandom than most people take for
Oh,
granted.
I completely understand. I left the Star Wars fandom after all, but like,
Mhm.
I did give you an example. I don't, because you ran through it, but like Andor, like a lot of people say Andor is like one of the best Star Wars things ever, and that came out after like the sequel trilogy. Then a lot of people didn't like that. So there are. I wanted to say, want to add on to that. There's a thing that who Schaeferless is, like a popular reviewer on YouTube, right?
Mhm.
Well, basically, he said he's like not interested in the MCU movies anymore because they're not as consistent as they were before, especially with them having to keep making more content with all the TV shows and stuff. So basically, I just go by what he does. Is that if something interests me, I'll go watch it. If I don't, I'll just like skip out on it. And I understand the whole emotional investment thing, but when I was saying, when I was giving you it when I messaged you about, it's like at a point, if you are just obsessing day in and day out about this stuff, like it's affecting you emotionally, you need to, you gotta, not the word let it go, it's just that you have to,
Mhm.
you know, at some point it's going to be unhealthy, and you need to find something better with that. Like, I know that, like, I don't want to like this. What's the word? I don't want to like downplay people's emotional attachment to something, because you did say, I think I caught wind of it, that it's like it is a part of them. But I think fictional media shouldn't be like the biggest thing that defines who you are as a person, because because of fictional media can only really take you so far in life, and there are like things that are very helpful in life, like we have life learning lessons, but it is important to like not like get so attached to where it's all you are as a person.
I would say sure. But like I would say that like in that case, like what would you say that, so like where should people be finding that fulfillment then?
Well, for me, I just went and like searched other franchises. Like, I think when The Last Jedi came out, I have an interesting story, because I think one of you guys said like everyone has their own Last Jedi story to them.
Mhm.
And I think I was just like, when I first walked into it, I'd rather like save my story for Last Jedi, but needless to say, I was disappointed, as most people here probably were.
Mhm.
But I wanted to get into something else, and then my friends, like one of my online friends who was a fan of it for a long time, like they were like, "Hey, watch Avatar: The Last Airbender." So I was like, "All right, fine." And then after like getting to season 1, I bought the Blu-ray for it that came out that year, because I was that interested. And then I went and did that, and I watched Legend of Korra, and then I was getting into the comic books, and I was like, "Wow, here's a franchise that I really, really like, that I thought was like has great characters, great story, and everything. I can get invested into this." And even though it's not like the thing like it's not Star Wars, it's something else. It's like you can't obsess over every single thing. It's like you have to move on to a certain degree. It's like, I don't know what the word for me is, like you gotta like take that. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to like laugh or something. I'm just trying to
No,
think
you're
of
good.
what it is.
I'm
Like,
almost holding off on my point because I have
it's like you gotta learn to let that stuff like it's sort of like a acceptance. Like, it sounds like it's treating it like a traumatic things like that thing that I really loved. It's just not how it used to be, and it's just like I wish for it to be better. I
Real
said
quick,
in my
before you say anything else,
uh,
Monstrosities sneaks in off the
sneaks
top
in.
ropes. Matt from Monstrosities giving me an out of nowhere RKO.
Hey Matt, it's
Let me tell you something, Matt from Monstrosities. I'm about to hit you with the Nico knee, brother. Also, as I just destroy my throat there, no one clipped that, by the way. I know Matt's been doing some really cool stuff with Common Writer and Media Blasters. So if you guys aren't subbed to him and if you guys aren't following him, definitely do so and follow what he's been doing because he's a good man. He's a very good man.
It's the guy that I can't think of a joke.
It's really interesting about like turning positivity into negativity. I remember when I was a young boy. I was a young Godzilla nooblet, and one of Matt's videos had upset me so much, and I knew he was going to G-Fest, and I was like, I was gonna tell him what's up, but I ended like, what's it called? We ended up talking. He seemed cool. He liked talking to me, and then we became really good friends. And I'm happy that my small like teenage nerd rage ended up making me really good friends with someone. That's like one of those stories I will always enjoy talking about. But
funny enough, that was the same thing because he's infamous for hating Godzilla 2014, and me being younger, I was like, how could you? Like I was exactly that way because
the real Kaiju Fan Clan. If you ever remember his 2014 video, what he called it, I love it. The real Kaiju Fan Clan.
But no, I have a similar experience to what you just said with him. But like we're cool. Like we talk. He hasn't been to G-Fest in like a year or so. But when I see him, I always say, "Hey man, how are you doing, man?" And we just like talk.
I will one day, Matt. I'll have to go out to see my friend because I need to do that once. But real quick, because before I lose my train of thought, picking up off of what you mentioned when it comes to kind of finding other franchises or things to enjoy, I think that's true that you can do that, but there's also cases where there are certain things that a franchise will provide that others won't. The reason I brought up the Souls community in particular is because the invasions that occur in the Soul series, there is no other game on the market that provides anything similar to that experience for players. And as a result, if the idea is, well, you're going to have to move on. If it's not providing you with what you're looking for, you're going to have to find something else. So there is fundamentally and objectively no other game that's going to provide that. And same thing for like people who are moving away from Halo, where
I know that there's like specifics to certain franchises and stuff that I get what you're saying, but you never know if you may find something you never knew about and you like that and you started loving that. Because I know Star Wars isn't real. Avatar: The Last Airbender isn't exactly the same as Star Wars.
Well, even Avatar: The Last Airbender, that's an interesting franchise to bring up because I would say that's like I'm not a fan of The Legend of Korra, and outside of Atlai, there isn't really any else besides like maybe the comics that I think is good from Atlai, and I'm not really all that excited from when it comes to like what the next show is going to be about. So like
I had a whole idea about what they could do. Like it would have went in a really dark situation, but it would have like built upon what Korra was doing with like the progression of technology and like how people who don't bend are like becoming like suitable fighters against benders in the Avatar. Like I wanted to delve into like, is the Avatar like less meaningful with all this stuff, or like what I wanted to have an idea because I always thought the idea of a combustion bender was cool.
So I wanted it to be like this stark thing, like it's a tragedy sort of Avatar, like it begins like in tragedy and ends in tragedy, but in like a self-sacrifice way. Appreciate you, Matt, for saying you miss me, but I wanted to like do this thing where, because of course, like if Korra dies, it would go to earthbending, but I wanted it to be like, say when they choose whatever, like it's been a while since I've read into like or watched the shows, like what exactly chooses the next Avatar.
Well, it's just like every time an avatar dies or pass, like every time the avatar dies, they reincarnate back into the cycle.
Yeah, I wanted it to be like, what if the reincarnation of the Earthbender accidentally died during, like when they, were born, like they only lived like a few minutes, and then it went and reincarnated into a firebender, but the firebender was a combustion bender.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens if a combustion bender enters the Avatar mode?
Well, that's the thing I've always wondered. Well, not to like derail too much into like Avatar shenanigans. I think
Yeah,
that,
I'm
like,
sorry.
any of the special bending techniques, I believe, were always a trip. Like, I think any bender could figure it out if like they got like the wherewithal to like understand how to do it. Like, I bet any firebender, if they knew like what to do, they could probably become a combustion bender.
Well, I mean, like an Avatar who is a combustion bender going into the Avatar state. I always thought, like, wouldn't that be like a amped up like Shin Godzilla beam?
Yeah, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But
I basically wanted it to be like he's training to be the next Avatar, but the world like is like debating on if the Avatar is more of a threat to their progression as a society, because they have less need for benders now compared to how it was like even in Korra.
mm-hmm.
And because of this, because this is like the first combustion bender Avatar, they like he becomes like this really big threat where he unintentionally like kills a bunch of people, and then he's on the run and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that would have been an interesting way to take the series if they were like going to progress even further with what Korra was doing, because they keep like advancing in technology and everything in like modern society.
Well, it does seem like that might be something they're going to want to do, based on everything else they've been talking about when it comes to.
I originally was
World Series.
I first watched the first episode of Korra, and when they immediately went to like the city, and there was all this modernization stuff, like I stopped watching. Like I didn't go to episode 2 for a while because I just thought this is too much. I just thought like this doesn't feel like the same universe, because I just couldn't handle it. But then I just gave it a chance, and for the most part, I liked the show.
I know for me, like a lot of Korra reminds me the like setting wise of like Full Metal Alchemist, if you've ever seen that series.
I need to get to so many things, and that's one of them. Is it Brotherhood or is the original?
Brotherhood, because it's closer to the manga, but like you'd still get a similar vibe from either series. So like if you want to do Brotherhood or the original, it shouldn't really not too much of an issue.
Mm-hmm.
But was there anything else from the
can we finish that whole like leave thing? Well, I understand there's like specific like things like the Soul series is like its own unique thing. There's always potential for those like to like make their own sort of Souls like thing, and there's always something you can find that you may never have known, like it's from a different thing. Like you may not even know that it's out there. And even if you don't find it, I think even for your own, because at some point you can't obsess about it, because mentally that is not going to help you. And the only logical reason why I see people like do that is content creators, because they have to talk about that stuff. like a Star Wars channel, and like if they just keep watching it because all the stuff that comes out they hate, it's like, well, I have to do it because my job is like, at the end of the day, your mental health is more important than anything else, even if it's like your job. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, but the other thing too is that, like, especially with content creation, with that being a job, one of the hardest things is that, like, rebranding into something else is always going to be dangerous, because if like you just tank all your contents, then that can cause, like, the amount of financial instability that can cause is something that is real for those kinds of people. And like then the question becomes like, should that ever be a job in the first place, if that's going to be like so much of an issue? Or like, well, you knew that the risk was coming the moment like you made that your job, things of that nature. I think those are all understandable. But I think that, like, is it true that, like, could you find something that like you really love? Yeah, but I think that, like, also then you're just you're basing off of the idea that, well, you're basing the premise off, well, there's always going to be something else, but like we could go down the rabbit hole and be like, well, what about this franchise, that franchise, or, oh, I really like this franchise, that franchise, they haven't done anything with that franchise in like years. Like, I know there's a lot of things that I very much like outside of Godzilla, and a lot of stuff that I enjoy that just doesn't get content anymore, even if it's like popular series. Like, I really like Dark Sun from D&D, but they haven't done anything Dark Sun related since like the 80s. Same thing with, like, I really love all the Cabera stuff. Most of it isn't translated in American, but and also there hasn't been a whole lot of new stuff around that content either. There's been a whole lot of really good Lord of the Rings stuff. I think that, like, is it like, I think there's hope in the idea that there could be more content out there for someone to enjoy, but I think that, like, the idea also kind of kicks the can down the road that there's always going to be something when there may not be something. If that makes sense.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I just think even if there isn't something, like, you couldn't find anything, mental health is still more important than, that sort of satisfaction that others may not be able to provide for you.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's true, but then also the question arises, like, how much is it really affecting their mental health?
Well, that's why I'm saying, when I said to you in the text, is like, you can obviously say, like, say you're discontent with this kind of stuff, but if you keep going at it and you just don't have anything else, and it's only affecting you, like, I don't know if it's affecting you personally. Only you know that. So if you can look at yourself and it is just doing nothing but harm for you rather than good, then I think you should do something about it and not just keep it the way things are. It's like, doing something is better than nothing.
I think that's true, but then, like, the question becomes less of is it affecting you, or is is it more it's dissatisfaction rather than actual, like, mental harm? I think there's like a lot of people
I
who are, like,
understand that there's dissatisfaction, but I'm talking about the people who take that dissatisfaction to a degree, like to an extreme. That's
like, what would be an example in that case? It's just so we can be more specific about the idea.
I don't really exactly have an example. Like, if I know for me, like, it was Star Wars. Like, I couldn't find anything for the longest time for years to, like, be excited for, or, like, say with positivity at the end of the day overall with all these shows. Like, oh, I kind of like this episode, then it didn't stick the landing or anything, or any of the like movies, like the sequel trilogy, like, ended in a dud. So I just, at that extreme, if I kept obsessing over stuff like how people Not to the extent, but for the longest time, it was always just talking about how bad The Last Jedi was. That was like the like the turning point for a lot of discourse on the internet. I know like Ghostbusters 2016 was like the one that started the snowball effect for this sort of culture war thing, but The Last Jedi did a lot of bad stuff, even to the I think a lot of people, even who love the movie, would agree that that movie had a really negative impact on a lot of things. And sorry, I'm observing your gameplay.
No, don't worry. I'm like observing my own gameplay, but like I think that like the other thing is that I think when it comes also like discussing like problems with media, I think that there is a like certain enjoyment that people also get from like doing that discussion in and of itself. I think that like to certain people it is probably like frustrating where like all they get to discuss is, oh, this means bad, this means bad. But I think that also there's other people it's like, oh, I enjoy the fact that like we can come up with writing solutions or look at a problem that is a poor script mechanically and see what can be done to change that.
Oh, okay. I have my own. I can actually give an example because when I was when I said I like left like Star Wars and everything, but basically I ran out of things to talk about with Star Wars. There was nothing left for me. Like, what am I supposed to say with the Star Wars stuff? I've argued with my online friends over this stuff for years. There was just nothing left, and the stuff that came out, even new content stuff, is like there's just like nothing else to say about it because I was not interested or I wasn't going to watch it anyway. So it's when you run out of something to do or something to say, it's like that to that point it becomes obsession and it just becomes unhealthy. That is what the example I would give, which was me just like standing there not doing anything and just like talking about the same thing over and over and over again with no new insight to it other than just my dissatisfaction that it came out ever so sometime years ago and it's just going to continue to like add up years upon years, and at that point it becomes ridiculous. So at that point it's like it only just becomes worse the longer it continues, and it just becomes a problem, and there's more productive things you can do with your time. Of course, there's always, I'm not saying like I'm not going to say like, yo, you can't be negative about something or like criticize something. For me, if I don't like something and if it's brought up in a discussion, I'll say what I don't like about it, or like I think Godzilla Singular Point is a terrible show. I think it's the worst thing from the Rara era or just modern Godzilla in general. Maybe not. Maybe because there's some comics that are worse, but
yeah, I would say like generally like for I know when it comes to myself, I enjoy discussing things good or bad, and I think that like there's value in terms of like dictating the conversation where I think that there is value in it being had. And when it comes to like where I find my enjoyment, I think that like I'm just generally a creative person on my own already, and as a result I find my joy in like my own like stuff as a result of that. And I think that that's where I have found a way to just to channel my displeasure with a lot of modern media is seeing where I can do something better. But I know that's not it for everyone, and I think that like be like dealing with people on the internet, I don't know where everyone's like mental health like journey is at that point. And I think that like you're always just gonna have to kind of take it step by step, I guess, with people.
Well, basically, because Star Wars is always a good punching bag, and it is like a good example, but like everyone uses the same points over and over and over again to show their discontent. Like it's the same thing over and over again. At some point, like it's not even like it's being brought up. It's just like it's being actively added onto. Like there's nothing else to say, and at that point you're just repeating yourself, and it just becomes don't know what the word is like.
But I think that like too, another thing is that even if like one person has said the same thing over and over again, you're going to be dealing with someone different who might have said who has probably going to be the same argument. And I know, being someone who deals with 98 arguments a lot, I hear the same arguments from people who like that film, and I would just generally realize that I'm going to have to probably restate my arguments again and again, because there's not everyone's heard what I've had to say about this film, and that just comes with.
Well, not specifically that. I'm specifically talking about people who share discontent, not in discussions, but more so like exclaiming it.
What do you mean?
Well, not like when they're like having debates or something. It's more like they always share the discontent, like maybe in a rant video, like they keep doing this rant over and over and over again. It just becomes tiring.
What would you say some examples are?
I don't know a specific YouTuber, but again, Star Wars, like it's usually the same, I guess. I don't know. Oh, I don't know what you describe as type of YouTubers yourself, but like the Geeks and Gamers and all that stuff that always like talk about Brie Larson or Captain Marvel or The Last Jedi. They just
okay. So if we can use Geeks and Gamers as an example, then
I don't know if that was a good example.
Because just to use it as the example here, I would say I can't really think of any time Geeks and Gamers recently has brought up Brie Larson when it comes to Captain Marvel. And I think really the only times they ever bring up Brie Larson is when it's part of a Captain Marvel news cycle. So like when the first film had come out, when the second film had come out, I can't really like say that like there has been much discussion outside of that. Most of the time I would say Geeks and Gamers is talking about like different news articles and stuff, further discussing. And I think that just comes with the territory of like looking at other people's media. And I think even looking at like what we do or what I do here on these streams is that I'm covering very similar ground when it comes to people's perceptions of Godzilla, what 54 means. Like, I think if I really went through it, the amount of times that I've had people in a video mention that Godzilla 54 is actually representative of America, or someone saying, oh, well, Godzilla 54 is actually a horror film. It just comes down to the fact that you're going to have people making the same arguments, and as a result, you're just going to have to keep on addressing them and being that side of discourse that you want to be a part of, or you want to see brought to light.
Yeah.
But I think that's just me personally, because I never mind having the same argument and again if it means continuing to get at the heart of what is important when it comes to that discourse.
It isn't like they're having it for discussion or argument. It's just more so they're complaining, just for the sake of complaining.
Well, I mean, like, can you prove that though, that they're making the video only to complain about something because they have nothing else to complain about?
Well, they were like the closest thing I could think of at that point, so I know it's happened. And there's people like on Twitter that I know there's like a specific person that always complains about the Wingard films, no matter what, even if it doesn't make sense and stuff like that. And it could be the same for anything else. Like these people that just don't have anything else to do because they liked something, and then someone that came in and they did something that they didn't like.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think like even if we're going to use the Wingard films, I'll probably make this the last discussion topick.
Because I wanted to ask about what was the whole unknowingly thing.
I'll say this, like, I'll do the Wingard film last, but I'll just do the unknowingly thing first. I never really interacted much when it came to what unknowingly was doing or like any of the drama around it, because I was a huge fan of the Man in the Suit to begin with. So I was like, it was just sort of it was like a whatever thing for me. And then most of the drama that came about it because of it was like, since unknowingly was a kid, it was like other kids thinking that they were going to be like the big cancel like heroes in the scenario with unknowingly, and it just became a giant shit show in my opinion. That's where like my issue came in when it came to stuff with unknowingly.
Did I say something stupid? Because I thought
no, it wasn't you. It was stuff in general that since you guys brought up unknowingly, it was just stuff that I observed when it came to stuff around that whole like man in the suit stuff.
It was something that I wanted to quickly talk about with Canucks because it was a very serious matter in regards to his own life because of something in the Godzilla community. So
yeah, no, it makes sense. And I think like the reason why it's like it was brought up, or at least like people know about it, is because it happened to a pretty like up and coming individual.
And speaking of the other YouTubers, like I know you knew that I was talking about certain YouTubers.
Yeah.
The reason I bring those up, but I didn't like mention them directly, was because those were experiences of mine in the past that I wanted to bring into the discussion as to rant about. And as for something like Black Aruni, last two live streams, at least, I know the one we talked about when we was just Monsterverse stuff, I thought we were on the same page, is that we want the Monsterverse to go in the right direction. Like, we want it to be good. So as far as I'm aware, we're both, like, fine. Like, I don't have anything, really. I just gonna move on. Like, it is what it is, even if I don't agree with it. I don't know if there was any other YouTubers I mentioned. What was it?
There wasn't. There was like someone that I know Canuck mentioned. I'm not sure really what the what if it's like someone I know or someone or like a drama I heard about.
So I can't really speak Platoon, but I know that guy's name.
No, but we talked about Platoon. It was like something about a YouTuber who had like collabed with a controversial YouTuber. I don't know what the context behind that was, so I can't really speak to it.
I think the other one I mentioned that I did.
It wasn't you. It was Canuck who mentioned it.
But I think I mentioned that you brought up was Blue Nova.
Yeah.
Interestingly, we had a lot of discussions like early 2020s together. But that's a video when I saw it, I was like, this is kind of a stinky video. And I know that someone said that they didn't even know that this whole thing was going on, but for me, I'm talking about my own personal experience. When that video came up and all the places I went to on social media and stuff, it was I still see that effect about the Heisei, the Heisei hate train from 2019 till now. It's not like it was before because the whole thing is like different. Like we had a whole different life change and things. We had a whole pandemic and everything. Things have changed and stuff like that. But I just want that whole thing.
I think the Heisei. I think because I think the Heisei video generally like spoke to something when it came to certain fans. I don't necessarily agree with the sentiment those fans have, but it definitely opened the door to a new form of discourse that I feel does, if it is bad information, should be addressed, and I have no problem with that being the case. And I think that anyone who wants to debate the Heisei series and he wants to use his points is within their rights to be called out if a point is bad.
It's interesting because I know the few detractors that comment on here say that I just don't want anyone to say the things that I like are bad. It's not that. It's just that I rather have a fair discussion and you bring points that, come from a place that are true. Like you genuinely watch the movie and those things happen in the movie and like you're not like intentionally like misrepresenting something. In the case of something like Shin Godzilla -1, because I've actually dealt with people even on Twitter and all that stuff, like some YouTubers, like Shin being like this nationalistic thing, because a couple of YouTubers or some people, don't think that, they think that it is like nationalistic, and that was like a small little controversy. I think I forgot his name, but he did a whole video topic about it. And what was interesting is because he brought up an example about the Godzilla -1 directors. I think I talked to you about this. The director of -1 did a movie about Battleship Yamato, and that seemed very like nationalistic. So
I know who you're talking about, Kyodai Kino.
And when I learned about that, and then I learned that he was going to direct Godzilla -1, it was taking place right after World War II. I was one of the people that was worried that it was going to be like blaming America, like being this like ignoring everything that Japan did during World War II. I was very afraid of that, especially with Konai Kino. Kodai Kino, like his showing that one of his films was very questionable, and like the state of like Japan and stuff. I was very worried and concerned, but I was so happy when I watched -1. I was proven wrong. I'll be happy if I'm proven wrong on something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm willing to debate people because I think it's interesting to see other people's viewpoints on stuff I may not like, or on movies I do like. It's just that I can't really think right now. It's like it's past midnight.
No, definitely, I feel you. It's past midnight for me as well, and we hit the 3-hour mark. And I think that at least the discussion, or at least what I add, is good, and we can always go back to looking at it again. But I appreciate that you came on, and I know Canuck sent me a message, so I'll probably either look at it later. Someone's gonna send it to him. But yeah, I think Ron mentioned that too in his review. Oh, no, that has nothing really to do with me. But
speaking of ETN, I remember he got a copy of Shin before it came to America for its limited theatrical run, and he said that he didn't like the movie, and apparently he got emails or messages from people that said that they would kill his wife and children just because of he didn't like Shin Godzilla. Despite the fact,
I think like people who do that, like in most cases, are either again mostly children or like the fringe examples of like adults who like have no chill.
But that should be something that I said in my video that should be pointed out. Like, even if you're like it's only for children, like telling this to them that it's okay that other people disagree with you, like it can help them to like be able to mature faster, like have a more healthy discussion. It would only make things better.
I know for me, like in my opinion, it speaks to like a person's ethics if like they're quicker to like tell someone to off themselves than they are to just argue the point and tell that person they're wrong. I think that like if you believe wholeheartedly in a point, then you should be able to argue it without like using slurs or like overtly threatening someone. I think that goes without saying. And I think that like in nowadays especially, more people are more willing to either shut out any things they disagree with, or are just gonna go for the throat instead of just actually arguing their points. But I think that's a discussion for another day, and I'm gonna probably want to wrap all this up.
Yeah, I don't remember what was the it was that, and you touched on the unknowingly part, but I don't recall what the other thing was.
Yeah, no, it wasn't all that super important, but
all right.
I appreciate everyone for coming on and staying with me for the 3 hours. We lost a few people along the way, but I appreciate them for staying long as they did. You know where to find the Rick. You know where to find me. I thank you all, and this has been Zimzilla signing out. And remember, ladies and gentlemen,
Semper Fi, motherfucker.